food production, or will he keep choosing ideology over empty stomachs?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've already gone down this path. Canadian Climate Institute has come out and said that it is non-negligible in the price of food. The industrial carbon tax is 0.008. Mr. Speaker, we know definitely well that that's not the case. There's other factors in the world that are taking place: a geopolitical trade war, climate change, drought in the prairie provinces. These are all adding to the rise in cost of food, Mr. Speaker. They know that, so let's get on board and treat Canadians fair.
The Honourable Member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, no one expected the verdict to be this tragic when judging the Prime Minister by prices at the grocery store. I heard from an 82-year-old woman who was forced to leave her hometown of Cambridge and her family just to afford groceries and rent. And Lacey, a single mum from Cambridge, told local media she spends her days asking, "Where's the sale?" clipping coupons and skipping meals just to feed her son. This is the reality for thousands of Canadians. Families are forced to buy whatever they can afford, not what's healthy or good for them, if they eat at all. So when so many families, seniors and working adults, are going hungry, how can this government possibly justify any more inflationary taxes?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, that leader's heart was 2 sizes too small when it comes to delivering affordability for Canadians. We cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We cut the tax for first-time homebuyers. We are continuing to deliver on affordability, school food program, personal service support, tax credit. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're focused on affordability. It's time for that leader to let the light in, let his heart grow, join us in delivering affordability for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister told Canadians that he should be judged on the cost of groceries. Well, I hope he has a good lawyer, because the verdict is brutal. According to Le Journal de Montréal, 36% of Quebecers are experiencing food insecurity. What's most tragic in all this is that 41% of them are employed. Hunger is hitting so hard that Quebec food banks responded to, get this, a record 3.1 million requests in 1 month. When will the Lee's Liberals finally stop their inflationary spending so that Canadians can feed themselves properly, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our investments are helping families. Budget 2025 contains many investments for children and families. This includes the school food program, which will help families save up to $800 a year. There's also the Canada Child Benefit, which can be about $8,000 a year for up to $8,000 a year for children under 6. We are here for Canadian families and children on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. Well, Mr. Speaker, what they're doing is just not working. And there's a family in my riding of 2 adults and 3 children. They are suffocated by the cost of living. They're spending the winter in a trailer. They were so ashamed that they didn't dare ask for food. A frontline worker was the one who alerted the food bank. Now the food price report confirms that groceries will cost $1,000 more next year. When will this Prime Minister stop his inflationary spending to give dignity back to Quebecers, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Secretary of State. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we take these matters very seriously. We are not fixating on imaginary taxes. We are here to help Canadian families. One of our first measures was to give a tax break to 22 million Canadians. That's how we are helping children. That's how we're helping families. And this is the work we are doing. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, Washington is calling on the federal government to do more to combat the problem of discount drivers. Even Americans are fed up with these dangerous drivers on our roads and on theirs. Now, yes, the Liberals have taken up our request to force companies to report the income of self-employed drivers, but the American embassy has told them that while this is a step in the right direction, it is not a cure-all. The Bloc Québécois suggested 10 measures. The Liberals only took one of them. And now they think the job is done, Mr. Speaker. As for the 9 other measures, they are shirking what they should be doing. When will they take the issue seriously? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Quite the opposite, Mr. Speaker. We take this matter very seriously, which is why we have put forward tangible measures, tax measures, information sharing measures, as well as measures in the Canada Labour Code. We are taking action. And do you know what? Surprise, surprise, the Bloc Québécois voted against our budget. The very same budget which will fix this federal issue of Chauffeur Inc. and will help us move forward on this file. So I hope the Bloc Québécois will wake up. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. If the Liberals had done enough to address the problem of low-cost drivers, the United States would not be demanding that they do their job. Washington is growing impatient. We need an official inquiry to shed light on this industry. The industry exploits workers, and especially foreign workers. The industry is spreading like cancer. We must prevent temporary immigrants from working in the trucking industry. We need a public registry of offending companies, including penalties. Not only are the Liberals failing to act, they are obstructing the committee's work. How many more road accidents will it take for the Liberals to finally wake up and do something?
Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, now we've truly seen it all. The member knows full well that provinces are the ones who certify truck drivers. Provinces are the ones who inspect the trucks. Provinces are the ones who hire road controllers. And it's the same in the United States. They have states which issue driver's licenses and send their truckers up to Canada. The Bloc Québécois, for the first time in Bloc Québécois history, is asking the federal government to meddle with provincial areas of jurisdiction. Unbelievable, Mr. Speaker.
Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
The Prime Minister told Canadians that he should be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Well, most ask Santa Sarah from Go Clean Co. for something they wouldn't normally buy for themselves, a new winter coat or a fancy new vacuum. But this year, there were more asks for needs than wants. One mom from Kelowna asked for groceries. This mom shared that after rent was paid and putting $10 of gas into her car, she was left with $3 for the next 2 weeks and a baby in diapers. Does the Prime Minister think that people asking Santa for groceries is okay in this country?
The honourable member for
Mr. Speaker, our
Women
government
and
is
Gender
taking
Equality.
real action on affordability, protecting women's economic security, and empowering women across the country. We're introducing a middle-class tax cut that's going to benefit 22 million Canadians across the country, and we're making the National School Food Program permanent. This is going to feed kids at school while putting more money back into their pockets, and we're making housing more affordable through Build Canada Homes. This is going to help single mothers and keep families, give them a safe place to live. We're also making auto tax filing for 5.5 million Canadians. This is real impact for Canadians, and that includes women and families across the country, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Liberal food inflation is crippling Canadian families. The Prime Minister told Canadians to judge him at the price at the grocery store, and he's failing. More and more Canadians are relying on charity simply to make ends meet. 33% of food bank users are children, and infant formula is in high demand at food banks, which is no surprise. A container now costs nearly $50, up 84% in the last 8 years. Does the Prime Minister care that feeding babies has become a daily struggle for Canadian families? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my heart goes out to parents facing challenges, and we care about families. So while Conservatives amplify panic instead of offering a single solution, the evidence is clear. Research from the C.D. Howe Institute confirms that the Canada Child Benefit is one of the most effective tools we have to reduce child poverty and help families afford essentials. Let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, Conservatives voted against this. They voted against it then. They voted against supports now for families and children. Mr. Speaker, and their actions speak louder for themselves, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
The
Prime Minister once said that the grocery aisle would be his report card. Well, today in that aisle is a mother standing still, staring at the price of baby formula that has gone up 84%. She does the math in her head and wonders what she's going to cut next because feeding her baby is not optional. Under these Liberals, even that has become a source of fear and anxiety. Their policies have driven up the cost of growing, shipping, and selling the food. When will this Liberal government stop piling on taxes and stop their inflationary spending and let mothers afford the formula their babies need to thrive?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Speaker, while the opposition focuses on imaginary taxes, we're focused on real supports for Canadians, and that includes, Mr. Speaker, a Canada Child benefit that keeps up with inflation, seniors benefits that keep up with inflation, a dental care plan that allows for Canadians to get their teeth fixed for God's sake, Mr. Speaker, something that these Conservatives vote against time and again. I ask myself, Mr. Speaker, what support for Canadian would they actually vote for? Because for them, it's sink or swim.
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
The Prime Minister told Canadians he would be judged by the cost of groceries. Well, the 60,000 Manitobans who are lined up at food banks each month have judged him. They judged him based on grocery prices that they haven't come down. They judged him because even though they are working multiple jobs, they aren't able to put food on their own tables. They have done everything right, and this Prime Minister has failed them. So the question is very simple. When will these Liberals end their inflationary spending and taxes so Canadians can afford to put food on their own kitchen tables again?
Yes, sir. The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, this is a party that voted against targeting the Canada Child benefit to those that needed it the most. This is a party that voted against dental care for seniors. This is a party that voted against the school food program. Mr. Speaker, time and time again, this party has voted against affordability programs. Canadians can judge. Canadians know on this side of the House, we're focused on delivering affordability for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know the truth about that side of the House, and it's that under them, their grocery bills are still going up. What the Liberals have done has made life more expensive, not less. How much worse does it have to get before these Liberals realize that there are disastrous tax hikes, packaging standards, and out-of-control spending that is responsible for 60,000 Manitobans now having to rely on food banks each month just to eat? How can these guys live with themselves? Will they take ownership, cut the red tape and the spending, and bring affordability grocery prices back for hungry Canadians?
Here, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
It's hard to take that member and that party seriously, frankly, Mr. Speaker, because in the budget is actually contained a tax cut for 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. They stand in the progress of that bill being advanced to help support Canadians. They voted against the National Food School Program, Mr. Speaker. And talking about food, Mr. Speaker, there was not one single thing in the Conservative platform for farmers in this country in April of 2025. That's why we're on this side of this House, Mr. Speaker. We're working for agricultural producers. We're working to help reduce taxes and to help support Canadians across this country, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, residents of Carleton have made it clear they want leadership and an economic vision for the country. Budget 2025 taxes for 22 million Canadians, makes the National Food Program for children.
Okay, I think we all got off on the wrong foot on that one.
Congratulations on your maiden speech.
So let's order to the Honourable Member. Order. We'll have to take that one from the top.
Mr. Speaker, residents of Carleton have made it very clear they want real leadership and an economic vision for this country. Budget 25 cuts taxes for 22 million Canadians, makes permanent the National School Food Program, and invests tens of billions of dollars in infrastructure and major projects across the country. These are actions that will improve the lives of Canadians. Can the Minister of Finance update this House on how the Budget Implementation Act will help strengthen our economy, and why is it being stalled?
The Honourable Minister of
Conservative can feel the passion in that question, Mr. Speaker. But the people of Carleton will know, Mr. Speaker, that there's only one reason and one reason alone why these key pieces of legislation have not yet been passed, Mr. Speaker. And it's the opposition partisan game, Mr. Speaker. Even ahead of Christmas, Mr. Speaker, they're stopping legislation for first-time home buyers, Mr. Speaker. They're stopping the creation of tens of thousands of jobs, Mr. Speaker. They're stopping the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're going to build Canada.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
Wants to believe he disagrees with everything that he wrote about pipelines over the last 10 years. He supported Liberals cancelling a West Coast pipeline in 2016 in his 2021 committee testimony. The Liberals' tanker ban off the West Coast makes a pipeline impossible. Will Liberals admit they were wrong on pipelines, wrong on the tanker ban, and vote for our motion to approve a pipe to the Pacific, remove the tanker ban, just like the Prime Minister promised Alberta in the MOU?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, it's really sad that the Conservatives are divided, because the Premier of Alberta supports the entire MOU. The Premier of Saskatchewan supports the entire MOU. The Premier of Ontario supports the entire MOU. The cynical ploy to pick and choose. Canadians can see through that, Mr. Speaker. Why don't they come on board with all of us and all the provinces and vote for Building Canada?
Honourable member for Calgary East.
They're talking out of both sides of their mouth. The Prime Minister tells his Keep It in the Ground caucus no pipeline. He tells Alberta there will be one. He says he supports a tanker ban, but then promises to override it. He's going to flip-flop on the pipeline until after the election, pretending he wants to build one without ever offending his loony left Liberals. Will he stand up to keep the Keep It in the Ground caucus? Get it?
The honourable member wasn't targeting a specific MP on this side, but it still wasn't maybe the nicest language. He may continue.
The Prime Minister talks out of both sides of his mouth. He tells the Keep It in the Ground caucus no pipeline while promising Albertans there will be. He says he supports a tanker ban, then promises to override it. He's going to flip-flop on the pipeline until after the election, pretending he wants to build.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I would invite the member opposite to read the entire MOU. And then maybe he could join the Premier of his province and support the MOU like all of us and all of the other premiers. Why doesn't he get on board and build Canada strong?
The Honourable Member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
A decade ago, this Liberal government killed the Northern Gateway pipeline, which would have shipped 525,000 barrels of Canadian oil per day to Asian markets. The value of that oil would have been billions coming annually into the Canadian economy. Instead of that economic supercharge, Liberals enacted crushing policies with no environmental benefit while doubling Canada's debt. That Liberal political decision greatly benefited the economies of other oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. But what did Canadians get from that sacrifice other than a mountain of new Liberal debt?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister has answered that question a number of times already today. What is clear to me is that the Conservative Party doesn't see the need to be investing in our economy. Mr. Speaker, we put forward a plan in the form of a budget, and that budget sees over $50 billion going straight into the community of each and every member of Parliament in this room, Mr. Speaker. It is going to create community centres, recreational centres. It's going to create local infrastructure that is going to benefit Canadian families from coast to coast to coast, and the Conservatives seem to be against everything that is good for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
Back to the actual topic. The Liberal MP from Victoria defiantly stated that he is, quote, decisively not in support. The Liberal Member of Parliament for Vancouver-Granville has said that it must have BC's consent. The Liberal MP for Fleetwood-Port Kells went further, saying that any pipeline, quote, must have the consent of the Premier of British Columbia. Without support from that one Canadian, he said emphatically, quote, there will be no pipeline. Will the Prime Minister stand up to his Keep It in the Ground caucus, or is his real plan to simply delay any pipeline until after the next election when he can kill it?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I don't know if that member's saying that we should be building a pipeline without having partnerships with First Nations over the objections of the democratic and duly elected province and government of British Columbia. I don't know that that's what that member's saying. It seems to be what he's saying. If he could perhaps clarify for this House and for the people of Alberta and British Columbia, that would be very helpful. For our part, we're going to work with British Columbia, we're going to work with First Nations, and we're going to execute this MOU, every part of it, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Caribou, Prince George.
The Prime Minister promised Canadians he would build now and move at unimaginable speeds.
He did.
But eight months later, all we have is a questionable MOU that punts the pipeline proposal down the road. It doesn't create jobs. It doesn't boost the economy. All it does is give Premier Eby another excuse to keep saying over my dead body. The Constitution is clear. BC has no veto. So why are the Liberals stalling? Will the Liberals admit they were wrong and vote for our motion to approve a pipeline like the Prime Minister said he would?
Good question.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this time it's from a Member of Parliament from British Columbia. The Member of Parliament from British Columbia wishes to now let it be known that he would stomp all over the duly elected government of the province of British Columbia, stomp all over Indigenous and First Nations involvement in any such advances. The member wants it to be made very clear that there is only one part of that entire MOU that appeals to him. For our part, we like it all, we're working on it all, and we're going to work with others to get it done.
The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
We are hemorrhaging jobs at a staggering rate in BC. Over the last 2 weeks, thousands of British Columbians have lost their jobs because of this Prime Minister. The pipeline will create jobs and make our economy self-reliant. We need this. Our nation needs this.
Hear, hear.
But the Liberals can't get their story straight. One MP says no pipeline without BC's consent, and the member from Victoria says he's decisively not in support. They say one thing to one group and another to another group. How can Canadians take this government seriously when they can't get their story straight and can't get their caucus in line?
That's right.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Let's talk a little bit about British Columbia, the single province with the most projects of national significance, the most capital investment announced, the largest capital investment in the history of this country, announced by my colleague, the Minister of Natural Resources. But if that's not enough, Mr. Speaker, how about 3 straight months of job growth? How about inflation down? How about wages up over the rate of inflation? How about celebrating the economic progress and the successes of this country instead of sitting over there and talking Canada down?
The Honourable Member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Told Canadians he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store. And in British Columbia, food bank use is entrenched, with about 1/4 of families food insecure. A family of 4 will pay about $1,000 more for food next year. We know this out-of-touch Prime Minister doesn't do his own shopping, but Canadians still have to pay at the till. Will he admit to BC families that he doesn't know a thing about grocery prices and that under these Liberals, higher bills are the new normal, or will he adopt conservative ideas to make life more affordable, like cutting inflationary spending and ending the industrial carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, it's hard to take that member and that party seriously on the questions when in the platform of April 2025, that member has a lot of farmers in his riding, Mr. Speaker. They're the ones who contribute in this country. Not a single platform commitment from the Conservative Party for farmers in this country, Mr. Speaker. It's hard to take that member opposite when he votes against the National Food School Program, Mr. Speaker. 400,000 Canadians benefit young children in this country. He votes against it. How about tax cuts, Mr. Speaker? That used to be the party that stood for that. They're standing in the way in this House of passing this budget 2025, which is good for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Also, member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
This Prime Minister told Canadians he should be judged by prices at the grocery store. Well, I heard from Amy in Cloverdale. She lives in a household of 2, doesn't have children of her own, and still can't keep up with groceries. When she heard more increases are coming, she wondered if the ultimate goal is to force people to crawl on their hands and knees begging and pleading for relief. For Amy, meat's a luxury, and she's terrified for the future of her 5 nephews. Amy asked me, when will it stop? So when will the Prime Minister finally stop driving up food costs so Canadians can afford to feed themselves?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I know the people in British Columbia are concerned about prices, and we are too. We're taking care of them. They want a government that's going to stand with them. That's why we're investing in the National School Food Program to support 400,000 families. That's why we're investing in supports for seniors, and it's why we're investing in supports for families to take care of their children. Mr. Speaker, we're going to stand with British Columbians. We're going to stand with all Canadians and take care of them.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
This Prime Minister told Canadians he should be judged by prices at the grocery store. Well, food bank visits have increased up to 80% in BC. The Kamloops Food Bank had almost 74,000 business visits last year, and the number keeps growing. Now donations are dropping, and food banks are reducing service areas to remain sustainable, cutting off rural areas from support. When will the Liberals cut their inflationary spending, their industrial carbon tax, and their new fuel tax so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that Conservative member talks about food prices, and yet he voted against making the National School Food Program permanent, Mr. Speaker. That is a program that helps young people, that helps school-aged children eat food in order to learn better, Mr. Speaker. This morning I made an announcement at a women's shelter in Montreal that our government has funded in order to help women find a secure and safe place to call home, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are against supporting our frontline workers, whether it's in the food industry, whether it's our shelters, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Strengthening economic security also means protecting the dignity and financial peace of mind of seniors, including fraud against seniors, which is a major political issue. Did you know who said that, Mr. Speaker? The member for Shefford. And we agree, and that is the reason for which it is so disappointing to see the Bloc Québécois delaying Bill C-15. Could the Minister of Finance remind those who are intentionally delaying this bill how their partisan manoeuvring has a real impact on our seniors? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, financial fraud is a serious problem that disproportionately affects seniors, newcomers and other vulnerable populations. That is the reason for which in Budget 2025 and Bill C-15 we are taking decisive action to strengthen enforcement and ensure that Canadians can have confidence in the security and resilience of their financial systems. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is against this. What a shock. It's difficult to understand why the Bloc would be against helping our seniors. What's easy to understand is that the 44 members of the Quebec Liberal caucus will defend seniors.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister told Canadians to judge him by the prices at the grocery store. 8 months have passed, and now Canada's food price report says that Canadian families should expect to pay an extra $1,000 for groceries in 2026. In total, grocery bills have doubled under the Liberals to $340 per week. When will these Liberals cut their inflationary spending, the industrial carbon tax, and their new fuel tax so Canadians can afford to eat?
That's right.
The Honourable Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, we've cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We're building affordable homes. We're making it easier for young people to buy homes, creating thousands of jobs by investing in our economy. The easiest way for Conservatives to make life more affordable to Canadians is to support our plan and Budget 25. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akia-Wenrack. Mr. Speaker, This government's economic policies don't work. Grocery bills have gone up, have doubled over the last 10 years under the Liberal government, and it'll cost $1,000 more next year. Food banks can't handle it. In Saint-André-le-Châtel, there will be 200 Christmas baskets handed out, 70 more than last year. In the Caisse Saint-Ambroise, 325 Christmas baskets are being prepared. There is one food bank that has already reached their quota. Some people who need this basket won't get one. Will the Liberals finally understand that their policy and politics simply do not work? The honourable member. What makes us different than the Conservatives is that on this side we believe that we need a strong economy to protect the most vulnerable. A strong economy. 54,000 jobs created in November, 60,000 in September. Unemployment is going down. Inflation is going back into Bank of Canada provisions, forecasts. But they never voted for. Not only that, they keep voting against the dental care system, the National Food Programme, the child benefit system. So, Mrs. Speaker, the Conservative hypocrisy is simply alarming. The Honourable Member for Bonneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Speaking of hypocrisy, they've implemented programs for the last 10 years, but nothing's working. In my riding, I went around 17 food banks that are preparing Christmas hampers for people, and they have all said that the number of requests have gone up. The Prime Minister needs to come down from his ivory tower, needs to go down in the field and stop. He needs to stop with inflationary taxes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have said it again and again. The Conservatives keep talking about imaginary taxes. Inflation is going down here in Canada, and we are here to meet the needs of Canadians. The Conservatives, however, voted against all the measures in the budget that will help people make ends meet, including our school food program that will help our children. Can you imagine that, Mr. Speaker?
From Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 contains many comprehensive measures to help make life more affordable for Canadians while helping grow the economy. Open banking promotes competition and affordability by letting Canadian consumers and businesses take advantage of cutting-edge technologies and share their financial data with approved and regulated service providers. Can the Secretary of State for Financial Institutions please outline why open banking is so important to the Canadian economy and how stalling progress on this file is harming Canadian consumers and businesses?
Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, open banking will give Canadians more control over their own financial data, allowing them to securely choose the services that work best for their needs. It will increase competition, lower costs, and help families get better budgeting tools, faster access to credit, and tailored financial products. These are common sense measures that the opposition is obstructing by delaying our budget bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge that Conservative leader to let his heart grow over Christmas. Put the partisan games aside and join us in building a strong and resilient Canadian economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the Conflict of Interest Act, it is clearly noted that ministerial staff, for example, are not allowed to get any gifts or other benefits. The Journal de Montréal stated this morning that 10 people connected to the Liberal Party of Canada received $1,000 each for services rendered during the last leadership race for the current leader of the Liberal Party of Quebec. Can the Prime Minister finally explain to Quebecers what's all this Liberal flim-flamming about?
La loi sur les conflits d'intérêts.
The Conflict of Interest Act doesn't apply. Does not apply to the province. This is a federal statute. Does anyone want to answer that one? The Leader of the Government in the House. Mr. Speaker, like the member and Canadians know full well, provincial and federal parties are independent from one another. Canadians can get involved in provincial politics. If someone does so, it's on a personal level, and we, of course, expect all staff members and former staff members of the government act in an exemplary fashion with regards to every statute.
Nunavut.
Nunavut's fishery is an underdeveloped economic engine, as QIA keeps saying. As a result of Liberal decisions, BC and Newfoundland hold more than 80% interest in their coastal fisheries, but Nunavut gets only half. Fisheries infrastructure like the deep sea force in Qikiqtarjuaq is left unfinished. Will the Liberals finally treat Inuit like a full economic partner so they can benefit from local resources?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to reassure my colleague across the aisle that the conversations are still happening. No decision has been made, and I encourage the participation as we move forward before making a decision. Thank you.
It being 3:11, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the amendment of Mr. Jennis to the motion at second reading stage of Bill C-15. Call in the members.
For the ones who build it, fix it, and maintain it, there's Grainger. You can count on Grainger for industrial quality products delivered fast, and you'll have access to experts ready to answer your questions. Call or click Grainger.ca today. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Good afternoon. I'm going to address two issues today. First is a policy announcement as part of our ongoing efforts as the Conservative Party to try to propose some policies to fix Canada's broken immigration system, and then I'm going to discuss an additional amendment to Bill C-12 that we'll be proposing. So, as part of our ongoing release of Conservative policies to fix Canada's broken immigration system, today I'm calling for the Liberals to return to in-person citizenship ceremonies. During the last general election, Conservatives campaigned on a platform of restoring the value of Canadian citizenship by ending the Liberal practice of conducting citizenship ceremonies virtually, and we reiterate that call today. Last year, over half of the people who became Canadian citizens did so by clicking a box online. That's crazy. There is no way to justify this practice, and with support for immigration at an all-time low, returning to inclusive, nation-building ceremonies is a no-brainer. In-person citizenship ceremonies are the essential unifying bedrock of Canada's civic life. Just as with marriage, these are sacred events befitting the responsibilities and obligations taken on. Swearing the oath of citizenship in front of an official should be upheld as an integral part of committing to the responsibilities that come along with being Canadian. For the last several years, as they embraced their post-national ideology, the Liberals rejected every opportunity to restore in-person ceremonies. Justice Minister Sean Fraser even defended virtual ceremonies, saying the practice could be easier for bureaucrats to manage. Conservatives believe it is time to end one-click citizenship and restore the full dignity and communal significance of in-person ceremonies for every new Canadians. I'd also now like to address Bill C-12. I am disappointed that the Liberals gutted common sense amendments that were passed in collaboration with colleagues from other parties during the committee stage of Bill C-12. I think it's really important to note that the Conservatives did something that really resembled work here. We put forward many proposals that I think that the Liberals will have to undertake eventually, proposals that have been put forward by experts and people across the country. And again, it was nice to see some cross-party collaboration with colleagues in different opposition parties to get some amendments forward. But again, we also saw the Liberals try to remove these, even the ones that we passed, through procedural tactics in the House. So that's disappointing. However, I have also given notice of an additional amendment to Bill C-12, which would ensure that the Liberals cannot use extraordinary powers in Part 7 to mass change, extend, or cancel visas or permanent residence cards in the bill, particularly to mass extend temporary work visas. During the debate on C-12, officials were unable to provide concrete examples of how they intended to use the sweeping powers in Part 7 of the bill. As such, Conservatives successfully amended the bill to include a requirement for the Liberals to report to Parliament on how they use these powers, and for the minister to come to committee when they are used, as well as a clause to clarify that the Liberals could not use the power to mass convert temporary residents into permanent residents. However, this morning, a news story showed that the Liberals missed a whopping 38% of temporary residents in its last census. This breaking news compounds a story from earlier this fall, which described how well over 1 million temporary residents have expiring visas. Last spring, the Liberals admitted they had no plan to get these non-citizens to leave once their visa expired, and for months, Liberals have resisted Conservative efforts to disclose entry and exit information, raising questions about the true accuracy of exits. And worse, in recent days, an operation the Liberals undertook to speed up citizenships to influence the outcome of the 1995 Quebec referendum also came to light. These issues, combined with the lack of clarity from officials on how they plan to use powers in Part 7 of Bill C-12, has resulted in Conservatives giving notice of an additional amendment to C-12, which would prevent the Liberals from using these powers to mass extend all types of temporary resident visas. Canadians need reassurances that those who are supposed to leave on expired temporary resident visas actually do. And frankly, the same goes for provinces whose healthcare systems and classrooms have come under great pressure after a decade of Liberals' mass immigration. If the Liberals have no plans to use the powers in C-12 to mass extend temporary resident visas, then they will support this amendment. Thank you.
Can I just ask where you plan to make this amendment, given that it's been through its committee stage? And I gather that the Speaker ruled out some of the amendments as not permitted. Could you just run by which of the amendments that passed in committee still stand, and where do you, as I said, where do you plan to make this amendment, given that it's been through committee stage?
Can I just say I love this question because it's a technical procedural question, and it's so rare that we get to do this. So we proposed over 30 amendments. Some were brought into scope in committee through support with the Bloc Québécois. Right now, my understanding what's still on the House is a quarterly deportation report to Parliament, an amendment to ensure that if an asylum claimant returns to their home country while the claim is pending, that their claim would be terminated, that the IRB would have the ability to set standard processes for terminating claims for ineligibility if they reach the board, requiring officers to have to give notice of an ineligible claim, automatic termination of asylum claims if they are ineligible, some pretty common sense stuff. And then with regard to Part 7 particularly, there were 2 amendments that we moved on the floor at committee. One to, as I mentioned in my remarks, ensure that the Liberals couldn't use the Part 7 powers to convert en masse temporary resident visas to permanent residents. Now, you asked the question about admissibility. So first of all, you know, the Speaker can't do anything without Parliament initiating it. So the Liberals did go out of their way to gut amendments that opposition parties had already agreed to. And, you know, you see the government House leader and stuff talking about, you know, Parliament not working, but the government made no efforts to talk to opposition parties before they took this. And here's the reality. The NDP have also signaled that they don't plan to support this bill. So they need one or both of the Bloc and the Conservatives. So, you know, it's a little arrogant on their part to just assume that they can, you know, act like a majority, gut these amendments without working with opposition parties, especially when they're constructive amendments and based on witness testimony. So in terms of the amendment that we're proposing today, I have given notice during the House process of report stage. Again, this, you know, part of a minority parliament is being able to amend bills when new information comes to light. So again, we had this story this morning about the 38% not counted in the census. We have stories about different premiers talking about the impact of uncounted temporary residents on their healthcare, their education systems, asking for more financial support. And then we've, you know, then there was a story in the Journal de Montreal about the Liberals using these powers way back in the day to, these types of powers to influence the outcome of a major turning point in Canadian history. So I think it's prudent that we amend an amendment that came in from committee to just additionally clarify that they can't use these to mass extend temporary resident visas, because those aren't numbers that are accounted for in the levels, right? So a bit of a technical explanation, but a welcome question.
Can I ask you about temporary foreign workers? I know the party wants to see that program abolished. We've just published a story about Tim Hortons lobbying MPs and government for more than the last year to actually have more flexibility in the program, in some cases increase the cap back to 20%. Also to have visas renewed in a smoother fashion when a permit's about to expire. What do you think of these asks? I know that they met, or on paper at least it looks like they tried meeting with some of your party's MPs
I mean, here's reality. We have a, 20% youth unemployment rate nationally right now, and the temporary foreign worker program has played a big role in removing entry-level job opportunities for youth. I've posted many times about how entry-level jobs, particularly at fast food restaurants, we see these requests for LMIAs, and I'm sorry, I can't believe that there aren't Canadians across the country that won't do these jobs. I think that is a canard, like a myth that has been propagated by industry, who has used, the Liberals' policy of just importing low-wage labor, that it's not fair to the people coming to Canada either, right? Because they're essentially indentured to these jobs. The UN has described the program as akin to slavery. And where I think we should be focused, and the reason why I think it's so important to abolish the TFW program, is that the government should be focused on skills training, labor mobility across the country, and restoring that first opportunity for young Canadians. So our position stands, and the industry will have to adapt, but that's where, the conversation with lobbyists, with people who want to keep the status quo should be, okay, we have 20% youth unemployment. How do we get those kids into these jobs? How do we train up the skills? How do we get people to move across the country? And I think that's where the smart betting long on Canadian kids and betting long on the Canadian economy conversation should be.
I wanted to ask you on just on a separate subject that do the Conservatives have any concern about a Canadian company supplying light armored vehicles to ICE in the U.S.?
I'm not familiar with that story right now, and I'll direct the questions to my colleague, who's the shadow minister for that file.
Could you explain the rationale behind the vote at the committee yesterday? And why would you want to hear, what would you want to hear from Jean Chrétien?
Oh, yes. So you're referring to the motion that my colleague in the bloc had to. So what happened for folks is that the Bloc Québécois did put forward a motion to summon Mr. Chrétien and others to committee in response to a story about the Liberals using the immigration process to potentially or allegedly alter the outcome of a big moment in Canadian history. I'm going to direct your attention back to what I said today. So we now have a bill in front of Parliament that is asking for more powers for the government to be able to alter immigration documents. And I think that the story was sort of like another red flag for me to make sure that the powers in that bill are clarified so that the Liberals can't use them to extend temporary resident visas. So I think that it'll be a very interesting meeting and one that I'm eager to take part in.
It's unlikely that this government will support this amendment that you're putting forward because you don't have the numbers that you do at committee level, and the Bloc has already signaled they're going to support this bill. If you don't get that change in, are the Conservatives going to support the way this bill as amended as it stands right now? So
I think it's important for the Liberals to understand that this is a minority parliament. It's not a majority parliament. I think that it was actually a really refreshing committee experience to go through the process of amending a bill, trying to strengthen it. But as I said with this, there's so many issues for the government right now. The story today about them undercounting temporary residents by 38%, the fact that there's over 1.2 million expiring or imminently expired or imminently expiring temporary resident visas right now. It is incumbent on the government to reassure Canadians that they have a plan for temporary residents to leave. And that's because a temporary resident permit is exactly that. It's temporary. And so the Liberals should clarify, even if it's just to the provinces, to say we have no intent on using these powers to mass extend visas when there isn't a plan for healthcare, jobs, or housing to keep up. So I would like to have a note of optimism and believe that the Liberals, hope springs eternal, right? If they have no intent on using these powers to mass extend temporary visas, then they should have no problem clarifying or voting in favor of this amendment. So I'm going to choose to be optimistic, but I think it'll be very telling if the Liberals vote against this. I have anecdotally heard some stories that this could be something that's on the table. But if the Liberals vote against this, what everybody should take it as is that they do plan to use the powers to mass extend temporary visas. And then they're going to have to immediately talk to the provinces. They're going to immediately have to talk to people who are thinking about housing supply and healthcare capacity, even primary education, right? We can't keep bringing in so many people that type of basic social and economic infrastructure can't keep up. So I'm going to choose to be an optimist and hope that the Liberals vote in favor of this. But if I don't, I guess I'll be talking to, if they don't, I guess I'll be talking to you guys again in a few days.
Question, which is, in committee, the Liberals proposed an amendment which was supported, restricting the use of these powers, for example, to fraud, very much narrowing down how it could be used. And looking at the wording, it doesn't seem that what you're suggesting actually falls within those criteria. And the other thing, Michelle, is that you put down an amendment in committee to stop them using it to offer permanent residence, which I believe passed. So why are you doing this with hindsight? And are you not satisfied with the narrowing down of that amendment?
So first of all, my amendment is in a different part of the bill from that, and I'm not satisfied, based on committee testimony, that what the Liberals proposed will affect this particular situation. And I think given that it's in different parts of the bill, that would be correct. But hindsight, I mean, we're in the middle of debate. And I know it's weird, right? Because the state of a bill is not a foregone conclusion. We're actually doing what parliamentarians should be doing. New information came up since the committee strategy. And, I'm looking at these numbers and I'm going, maybe we should additionally clarify this, right? And I know it's weird because you don't often see this happen in Parliament, but the outcome of this bill is not a foregone conclusion. There has been a robust amendment strategy. So we'll see what happens in debate. But the Liberals should, if they want to reassure Canadians, they should support this common sense amendment. Thank you.
Unreal deal is on. Find new deals every week at our best prices.
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards because we've printed them for millions of small businesses over the past 25 years. But we also print signs, stickers, shirts, and more. If you need it, we print it. Print it all with 20% off for new customers at Vistaprint.ca.
Mechanics, engineers. This is a business that is among the most advanced in the world in battery storage, well service, fracking pumps, and other highly advanced technology. And I want to recognize the incredible team we have of MPs: Pat Kelly, Greg McLean, Dalwinder Gill, Amanpreet Gill, John Barlow, David McKenzie, David Bexty, and the great Stephanie Kuzi. I think Stephanie's the MP for this area. Are you not? This is not who. This is. Oh, this is Jazz. Jazz isn't here, but so you're going to have to step in for him. Then you will do that. But an incredible team of great Conservative MPs who are fighting for this country here in Calgary and across the land. And the reason we are here is to announce the Canadian Sovereignty Act and to make a call to action. A Conservative government would have acted more quickly to protect the sovereignty of our country. Under the Liberal government, that sovereignty has been eroded by policies that block our development, tax our people, and make us uncompetitive. The Canadian Sovereignty Act would move us in the opposite direction. It seeks to legalize economic development, reward those who build, protect Canadian innovation, and get shovels in the ground on major nation-building projects between now and March the 14th, the one-year anniversary of Mark Carney taking office. The problem, of course, is that Donald Trump has imposed unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs on our economy and our people. Now, Mark Carney promised that he would handle Donald Trump. That's a quote. He said that he would negotiate a win with Donald Trump. He said that the deal would be done by July the 21st, and then he said it would be done by August the 1st. Those promises were not kept. The tariffs have actually doubled since Mark Carney became Prime Minister, promising that he would get results. The promises have not been kept, and meanwhile, Canada's economy gets weaker. The deficit is now bigger under Carney than it was under Trudeau. Inflation is rising. Home building is falling. Tens of billions of dollars of net investment have left Canada since he took office. Not a single major pipeline or natural gas facility, a new one, has been identified for approval by the Carney government, and we're going in the exact wrong direction. In fact, there are 9 major energy projects right now that mining projects that are waiting for federal approval, many of them backed by Indigenous people. It now takes 18 years to get a mine approved in Canada. The Liberal government has killed $670 billion of resource projects. 16 major projects are dead. Their emissions cap is going to kill, according to the parliamentary budget officer, 54,000 jobs that will vaporize $20.5 billion of GDP. And these are all self-imposed, self-inflicted attacks by the Liberal government on our economy. On housing, Mr. Carney promised the fastest and biggest buildup of housing since the Second World War, that he would double home building. Since that time, home building has actually gone down in Canada, and according to his own housing agency, it will fall next year and the year after that. It will not even be half of the 500,000 annual builds that he has promised. So far, he's still trying to set up a new bureaucracy with an awkwardly named Build Canada Homes, because he hasn't even set up the office. He hasn't built an office or built the bureaucracy yet, let alone built a single home. We need to get building now. And that's why the Conservative proposal for a Sovereignty Act will take action immediately. In this fall, we will introduce a motion calling on the government to put forward this legislation. The Sovereignty Act will legalize pipeline and other major projects by repealing the anti-development law C-69. It will legalize shipping Canadian energy off the northwest coast of BC by repealing C-48. It will axe the industrial carbon tax, something the Europeans are doing, and given that our competitors in America have no industrial carbon tax, it is untenable to force our people and our industries to pay this tax. We will get rid of the oil and gas cap that kills jobs. We will get rid of the ban on plastics, the petrochemical industry that produces our plastics. The plastics themselves are essential, and so are the jobs that go along with it. This, by the way, this plastics ban is not about, it's just saving your straw. It's about saving you about $400 or $500 a year in food that would otherwise go bad because it would not have plastic to preserve it. And we have a wonderful Alberta-based petrochemical sector that contributes to plastics that we need to protect. We'll get rid of liberal censorship laws that prevent our energy companies from talking about their incredible achievements and their environmental stewardship. We will legalize into the future your right to drive a gas or diesel-powered truck or car by repealing the liberal EV mandate. All of this will be in one bill. Next, we're going to reward those who build. We'll get rid of the capital gains tax when you reinvest your proceeds here in Canada. This will cause a boom in Canadian investment. Here in Canada, we get about half the investment per worker as they do in the United States of America. We get about 14, 15 grand of investment per worker in Canada. In the States, it's 28 grand, both measured in US dollars. No wonder that the American economy is leaving us behind. We need to reward investment by letting people who sell one asset and reinvest the money in Canada do so without capital gains tax. We will give free trade bonuses to the provinces, paying them the economic benefit that results from them opening their markets to fellow Canadians. We'll protect innovation by requiring in this law that the minister do a review and present a plan to stop the mass sell-off of Canadian inventions, discoveries, and innovations. We pay for all these incredible technological breakthroughs in Canada, often with tax dollars that subsidize it at university research and elsewhere, and then it's sold off to the Americans. And we become dependent on them for the technology that we ourselves invented. Finally, outside of the bill, we are making a call to action. Today, Conservatives are calling on Prime Minister Carney to have pipeline construction underway for at least 2 projects and to have at least 1 new natural gas liquefaction project and a road to the Ring of Fire in Ontario under construction by the first anniversary of him taking office. The Prime Minister can and must do this, and he can do it by consulting First Nations as required under Section 35 of the Constitution. Now, you might say, this is too ambitious. How could you possibly get a pipeline under construction in mere months? Well, he's been in office already since last March, and he said, and I quote, we need to think big and act bigger. We need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. I couldn't agree more. That doesn't happen through meetings through plans and speeches and forums and press releases. It happens through action. We need shovels in the ground, and we need deadlines to make those shovels dig and get things done. This is a test of leadership. Now is a time for action. We're calling on the Prime Minister to live up to his words and the very boastful promises that he made during the election. We do this because we want to put our country first. We want Canada to be truly economically self-sufficient and sovereign. And we want this to be once again a country where hard work earns a powerful paycheck that gives people a great life and an affordable home on a safe street. That was the Canadian promise that the country made me when I was growing up here in Calgary, Alberta, about 10 or 15 minutes from where we are right now. And I want that promise for every single Canadian. That is our purpose. This is our plan. Let's get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Oh, you're holding it. Okay. G'day, Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail.
Thank you.
Question here, when you're talking about getting pipelines built, there are no projects being proposed right now. There's none on the table. BC has already said, hey, we don't really want a new oil pipeline. How do you overcome those kinds of hurdles? And just on the tariff question, which counter tariffs do you reckon should be removed?
Thank you very much. I think there's 3 questions there. Yeah. First 2, that's okay. It was well executed, a hat trick. Let's start with the chicken and egg problem. So this is the opponents of pipelines are using this very cleverly. They're saying, well, we can't change the rules to allow a pipeline because there's no pipeline proposed. That's because the rules don't allow pipelines to get built. So you have, for example, C-69 that, according to the Pipeline Association, means you'll never get one approved. Then you have the energy cap, which means that Alberta will never be able to produce enough oil to put in a new pipeline. And then you have the shipping ban that prevents that oil from going anywhere. And then, you know, the NDP and Liberals say, well, nobody wants to build a pipeline, so we can't approve one. Well, of course, nobody wants to build anything in Canada because the law makes it impossible. So that's why the Canadian Sovereignty Act will legalize building pipelines, producing energy, and putting it on ships. And when you do that, you will have pipeline construction like you do all around the world. You know, I'm just looking at these incredible projects that have been done in other countries around the world. You've got the Eemshaven LNG terminal in the Netherlands. It went from plan to completion in 6 months. The gas grid LNG terminal in Finland, agreement signed in May of 2022, started construction in August of 2022. That's 2 months later. The Wilhelmshaven, Germany project that was announced, this is an import terminal for LNG, announced in March 2022, completed in December 2022. This is how things get done everywhere else in the world. Here in Canada, nothing gets done because Liberals ban things from getting done. We're proposing to legalize fast energy production, construction, and exportation, and that is why we need this bill. So we can do it. Let's get rid of this chicken and egg distraction that the Liberals have imposed. As for Mr. Eby opposing him, and I, with the greatest respect, I have nothing against him personally. I think he's a nice guy, but one man can't block a project. British Columbians want a pipeline, Albertans want a pipeline, Canadians want a pipeline. We can't wait till everybody's on side. I mean, you know, there's some people out there who don't think Elvis is dead. We can't get everybody to agree on any basic fact, even the basic fact that we need a pipeline. So you're going to need national leadership, and yeah, that means that some people are going to protest, maybe chain themselves to a tree, but we have to push through that if we're ever going to get anything done. As for the tariffs, the counter tariffs should be, as I said, and I think Mr. Carney has copied my language on this, we need to narrowly target our counter tariffs at things that maximize the impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on Canadians, to put the pressure on our American counterparts to remove the tariffs so that we can restore a true free trading relationship with them once again. Thank you.
Marseille.
Oh, geez. Everybody here is going to be, they just had to suffer through my very lengthy answer. But I'll do it, je vais le faire en français. Encore, le numéro 1, on dit qu'on ne peut pas bâtir il n'y a pas d'entreprise qui propose des pipelines au Canada. Puis, c'est vrai, c'est parce que les lois interdisent les projets de pipeline. Donc, si on interdit les projets, il ne va pas y avoir des entreprises qui proposent ces projets. Le projet de loi pour la souveraineté canadienne, ça propose de légaliser la production, la construction et la transportation de nos produits énergétiques. Et quand on adopte cette loi, on va permettre les entreprises de les bâtir. Deuxièmement, Madame la journaliste m'a demandé, c'est quoi, what was the second question again? Sorry, the province, good. Monsieur Eby, le Premier ministre, n'est pas d'accord avec un pipeline. C'est la vie. On ne peut pas plaire à tout le monde. Il faut bâtir des choses, même s'il y a certains politiciens qui ne veulent pas. C'est une décision fédérale. Troisièmement, on devrait cibler les tarifs, les contre-tarifs aux produits qui vont avoir le plus grand impact au sud des États-Unis, aux États-Unis, et l'impact minimal ici au Canada, afin de mettre une pression sur nos amis américains de rétablir le libre-échange. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Next question.
Heather Yerkes-West with Global National. Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to ask how you're feeling heading into the by-election and introducing the Canadian Sovereignty Act today. How often are you encountering Alberta separatism sentiment through the campaign, and what have those conversations been like?
Well, I'm loving the campaign. I'm having a lot of fun, actually. I love the people of Battle River Crowfoot. They're the people who feed power and protect our country, feed through the great ranchers and farmers, power through the incredible oil and gas industry, most of all the Hardisty tank farm, which moves $90 billion of energy products. That's more than the GDP of many countries, and this is a town of about 600 people. And of course, it protects our country with the people, the great men and women who serve at CFB Wainwright. So I'm having a lot of fun. I'm meeting a lot of people who are very angry about the way that the federal government has abused and mistreated Alberta. And what they're saying is the era of pay up and shut up has got to come to an end. Alberta deserves a better deal within Canada. And one of the ways we make that happen, one of the ways we unite our country, is to produce our resources. The oil and gas workers who are suffering, living in very tough conditions right now because there's just not enough work, despite the global oil boom, all they want is to get a job where they can go and make the whole country richer. So, you know, I met a guy the other day. He's an oil and gas worker. He was doing very well up until about 10 years ago. Now he's got to split a mobile home with a friend. He's in his 40s or 50s, and he can't afford his own place. And it's because there's just not enough work. All of this is the direct result of the federal government banning oil and gas production through C-69, C-48, the energy cap, the industrial carbon tax, and we could go on and on and on. If you unlock the power of the energy sector to make all Canadians richer, I can tell you Albertans will be more than happy to continue to contribute to this country, and it would be the greatest thing we could do to unite all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Rick Bell, Post Media.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. Welcome back. Just this week, the Smith government has said the clock is ticking. A few weeks ago, Premier Smith said her expectation was to hear some indication by around September 15th of what the federal government plans to do with regards to the so-called 9 bad laws, emissions cap, etc. 2 days ago, the Environment Minister, Rebecca Schultz, said he doesn't have to wait for Parliament to remove the to not put in the emissions cap. He could announce it at a podium today. That hasn't happened. So my question is essentially, I know you're going to have to peer into the mind of Mark Carney here, but what's going on? Why do you believe they are not coming out and giving an indication of what might happen? Why aren't they standing up and saying we're looking at not bringing in the emissions cap, or we're looking at doing something about the No More Pipelines law? Why do you think, what's going on there? Why do you think the federal government is not dealing at all in any way with this issue?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Mark Carney and then the Liberal Party. Mark Carney for the last 10 years, was a net zero, keep it in the ground green fanatic. He said that he wanted to keep at least half of our oil in the ground. And he believed in, he's testified against the Northern Gateway Pipeline. He supported all of the carbon taxes. He's publicly spoken out in favor of the electric vehicle mandate to ban your gas and diesel-powered cars. Now, he's tried to present himself as some big change because he looks and sounds different than Justin Trudeau, but he has supported all of the same policies. And what he's doing right now is ragging the puck and trying to drag people along into believing that he will one day do something. But he hasn't done anything other than hold a lot of meetings and make a lot of bold statements. C5 is better than nothing, but it won't do anything for the energy sector here unless you also get rid of the nasty 9 laws that Danielle Smith is asking us to end. Like I said earlier, you cannot build an oil pipeline, even if the pipeline itself were approved, if the government is capping the production to prevent oil from going into the pipe, or if the government continues to ban shipping the oil when it comes out of the pipe. So it's not enough to just pass one law that gives himself the power to cherry-pick projects. What you actually have to do is get rid of the nasty 9 anti-development laws, and that's what the Canadian Sovereignty Act will do. It will legalize fast development of major projects in hydroelectricity, oil, gas, nuclear, and more, so that we can become self-sufficient and sovereign. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Josh McLean, CBC News. If you don't mind responding in English and French, please.
Yes, sir.
Should Canada continue to remove some counter tariffs on American products, and how would you get a deal that didn't include tariffs?
Well, before I talk about our position, I just remind you that Mark Carney has broken his promise on this. He said that he would do dollar-for-dollar tariffs during the election while he was simultaneously lifting those tariffs. And he has made concession after concession to President Trump. He's been bending over backwards for the president and so far has gotten nothing in return. We think that the counter tariff should be narrowly targeted on the things that will have the most impact on the Americans and the least impact on Canadians. We do this by targeting things that we don't need, can make ourselves, or can buy elsewhere. That will allow us a minimal opportunity cost in seeking the products from other places, while increasing the political pressure on the Americans to get a deal that will allow Canada to have unfettered access to the American market.
En français.
Ah oui. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Carney a promis dollar pour dollar dans les élections lorsqu'il était en train d'éliminer ces tarifs. Il a fait une concession après l'autre à Donald Trump afin de plaire au président. Il n'a pas eu une seule victoire de l'autre direction. Nous, les conservateurs, proposons des tarifs, des contre-tarifs qui sont très bien ciblés aux produits qui vont maximiser l'impact sur les Américains lorsqu'on minimise les impacts sur les Canadiens. On doit choisir des produits qu'on peut produire nous-mêmes, acheter ailleurs ou dont on n'a pas vraiment besoin afin d'accomplir ce but. Merci beaucoup.
Next question.
Annie Véro, Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour.
C'est possible de répondre en français et en anglais aussi, s'il
Oui.
vous plaît. Par rapport à l'élection partielle du 18 août, vous avez critiqué les actions du Longest Ballot Committee qui ont présenté plus de 200 candidats. J'aimerais savoir pourquoi vous n'avez pas aussi critiqué le groupe dans le passé quand ils ont fait la même chose dans Toronto-Saint-Paul ou encore à Lassar-les-Morts-Vernon.
Honnêtement, je n'étais pas vraiment au courant de ce processus à ce temps-là. Ils m'ont ciblé dans 2 comtés différents maintenant. C'est bizarre. On ne sait pas pourquoi. Je pense que j'étais le seul chef ciblé dans les élections passées. Mais moi, je crois que n'importe qui devrait pouvoir se présenter s'ils veulent vraiment faire partie de la démocratie. Mais les fausses candidats qui ne visent même pas à gagner et qui ne font même pas la campagne ne devraient pas pouvoir inonder le scrutin en ajoutant 200 noms. Il y a une solution qui est très simple, c'est d'obliger les gens, chaque candidat, d'avoir leur propre signature unique afin de montrer l'appui qu'ils ont personnellement et d'avoir leur propre agent financier. C'est comme ça qu'on va pouvoir éliminer ce cette approche qui, moi, je crois, qui est irresponsable. Okay, thank you. Oh, you want it in English? Okay. Look, I didn't know a lot about this longest ballot thing when it was happening. I don't think it happened very much, but it happened some years ago in some other riding. But they've targeted me in 2 different ridings now. And the reality is I don't have a problem with anyone who wants to run for office, even if they're not known or not wealthy. They should be able to put their name on the ballot if they truly want to run. But that's not what these people are doing. They're adding their names even though they're not campaigning. They don't expect to win. They just want to inundate the ballot to confuse the situation, make it harder for people to vote, people with vision problems, the elderly, others who have difficulty are going to have a harder time voting, and it shouldn't be allowed. The simple solution is just say that if you want to be a candidate, you have to get several hundred signatures of your own. You can't just use the same 100 or 200 signatures for all the candidates. And every candidate should have their own financial agent. If you did that, this interest group would not be able to pull off this stunt and this scam. And so that's why we're proposing to change the law to make sure that this longest ballot stunt never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Thanks for taking my question, Keane with Juno News. I'd like to ask about immigration.
Yes.
Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom has been quite popular recently. He might even be Prime Minister if an election was held today with his plan to deport illegal migrants across the Channel. Donald Trump, same thing. He just launched a father-son recruitment campaign for ICE. It seems like the entire Western world, including the Liberals, have realized that out-of-control immigration is a problem, but Canada is the only country without a solution to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have sovereignty without control of the borders, so I'm wondering what your plan is to fix it and get illegal migrants out of this country.
Thank you. Well, for anyone who has been deemed inadmissible needs to leave, and they need to be deported. Anyone who commits a crime while they're in Canada, they need to be immediately detained, and when their detention is complete, they need to be deported from the country. We need to track down the roughly 600 criminals that the Liberals have lost track of. That means using all our security agencies to find out where they are, to locate them, arrest them, put them on planes, get them out of Canada. We need to make it clear that anyone who commits a hate crime or an act of violence against an identifiable group should be, that is not a citizen and not a permanent resident, needs to be deported from this country. We need to get rid of the incentives for people to come here that are not real refugees. So we need a review of all the benefits that go to people who come as asylum claimants to make sure they're not getting more benefits than Canadian taxpayers get. And those that arrive last should be their cases should be treated first so that they know that they'll be leaving quickly. That will get the message back to the country of origin that if you come to Canada and you're not a real refugee, your case will be heard in a few weeks and you'll be back in your own country. That would, right now, there's the opposite incentive. People who are not real refugees come into Canada and they say, well, even if I'm rejected, I'll have 7 or 8 years of appeal, during which time they get all kinds of benefits. If it was very clear that the benefits wouldn't be there, that they would be sent back within a couple of weeks, they wouldn't come in the first place. We need to secure our borders to stop the crossings. And more broadly on immigration, we need to bring way down the numbers of international students, of temporary foreign workers, that are flooding our markets with low-wage labor. The big corporations love it because they can drive down wages for Canadian youth who are facing unprecedented unemployment. The temporary foreign worker program was not meant to drive down wages. It was meant to fill jobs that Canadians could not or would not do, particularly in agriculture. Now it's just become a full-purpose thing that Starbucks or anyone else can use to drive wages down. If they're having a hard time getting Canadian youth working, what they need to do is raise wages. So we need to cut back on the temporary foreign worker program. And finally, the overall number needs to go down. Over the next several years, we actually need more people leaving than coming. That's net negative migration. And so that's what I've said. We've got these millions of people whose visas are going to come up. When their visas run out, they're not eligible to stay. They need to be told to leave. And if they don't leave, then obviously they need to be deported. And that will allow us our housing, health care, and jobs to catch up with the number of people in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this press.
All right. Thank you, guys. at home. Here in Canada, things are not changing as he promised they would. In fact, they are actually getting worse. In replacing Justin Trudeau, he claimed that things would be different. Well, they're different only in that they continue to worsen. There have been many grand announcements, high-profile meetings, and grand statements, but none of the results promised. Government spending is growing faster than ever, faster than when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. Inflation and the cost of living continue to rise. Housing costs, which had already doubled, are now rising faster than before. And we see that the home building numbers are worse today, even after Carney promised that he would double them. Crime rages in our streets as catch and release laws still release the most dangerous monsters to terrorize our communities. Carney has kept Justin Trudeau's out-of-control immigration numbers. Worse, the Liberal government has lost track of 600 foreign criminals with records of committing crime in Canada who should have been deported but are now wandering our streets, God knows where, doing God knows what. Low-wage temporary foreign workers take jobs and drive wages down for our youth. No major projects, such as pipelines, have been proposed, approved, or begun construction. His energy cap, Carney's energy cap, industrial carbon tax, and continued support for banning pipelines, for the laws that ban pipeline, are keeping our resources in the ground and making us more dependent than ever on the Americans. So much for, he said it was going to be build, baby, build. So far it's been block, baby, block. He's not actually getting anything built. He's all talk and no action. Things are not different. They are getting worse. And there's more trouble ahead. Mark Carney's promised to ban your gas, truck, and car, which a ban that begins phasing in just months from today. It will kill jobs, balloon costs, and grind rural communities to a halt. Farmers, ranchers, resource workers would not be able to do their jobs because EVs don't work over long distances and in cold weather. It would literally erase many small towns from the map. Now, a lot of people will say that is hyperbole, but I asked the farmers here today, could the rural communities across the prairies actually continue to go on if they had to drive exclusively electric vehicles? Could that run on an electric battery? How could you move your grain to markets? How could you do the regular work that's required to have a pickup truck in minus 40-degree weather in February? It is simply not possible. What Mark Carney was doing by banning gas vehicles is he is banning the rural way of life. Communities across Western Canada, rural Ontario, y compris au Quebec, and in the rural Atlantic would be gone. And forget about the northern territories of our country, where this pipe dream would be impossible. There's not even the electrical infrastructure. It would cost $300 billion to put in place the electrical charging stations and transmission networks to actually do that, which would be thousands of dollars of costs in higher taxes and prices for consumers for every single family. And not only would it eliminate rural communities, it would eliminate our auto sector. And don't take my word for it. I want to quote from a letter by automotive manufacturers who said, and I quote, this is a letter to Mr. Carney, to which he has not even responded. There is no longer a pathway to achieving the government's mandated sales level of 20% in 2026. If the mandate is not urgently repealed, it will inflict serious damage on automakers, the dealership network, and the hundreds of thousands of Canadians employed in the sector. The result of this regulation is lower vehicle sales, higher prices for Canadians, and less jobs for the sector. The heads of the major manufacturers are not the only ones sounding the alarm. Nearly 50 Ontario mayors have written Mr. Carney telling him to scrap his ban, warning that, quote, self-inflicted harm, end quote, will damage jobs and investment in their communities. Yet, starting in just a few months, on January 1st, the Carney mandate, the Carney ban on your gas vehicle will begin to be phased in. It will require 20% of dealership sales to be electric, and any car sold above that quota will pay a $20,000 tax. I call it the Carney tax. The Liberals' mandate would continue to worsen as years go by until 2035, when gas vehicles would be banned altogether. The auto industry is already under enormous stress after Mark Carney broke his promise to get a July 21st, 2025 deal with to end the tariffs imposed by the United States. The last thing they need is a job-killing, price-hiking gas vehicle ban. The CAA found that all electric vehicles can lose 40% of their power during cold winters. EVs that are comparable in utility and function to their gas-powered vehicles on average cost about $20,000 more. Consumers should be free to choose the car or truck that they drive. They should be able to decide for themselves what they buy and how they get around. And yet we know that Mark Carney's plan will punish them for making those choices, and according to the Canadian Journal of Economics, kill 38,000 jobs across this country. That is why I am announcing today the Conservatives are launching a massive nationwide campaign to stop Mark Carney's ban on gas-powered vehicles. This campaign will include motions in Parliament, pressure campaigns in local Liberal MP ridings, press conferences and events at car dealerships across Canada, petitions, and other activities that will mobilize Canadians to maintain their right to decide what car they can afford and what car works for them. It's time to put Canadians back in the driver's seat. It's time to put Canadians back in the driver's seat so that they can decide what life they want to live. Mes amis, le plan de Mark Carney pour bannir des voitures à essence va tuer des emplois, effacer des communautés rurales à travers le Canada, attaquer les gens dans les régions où on a besoin des camions. Nous, les conservateurs, veulent remettre les Canadiens au volant. Et c'est pour ça que nous lançons aujourd'hui une campagne pour contrer l'interdiction libérale sur des voitures à essence et avec le but pour redonner aux Canadiens la liberté de choix dans l'achat de leurs voitures et de leurs camions. Nous croyons que les Québécois et les Canadiens ont la sagesse et le bon sens de choisir leur propre voiture et leur propre camion. Et nous voulons sauver les emplois et réduire des prix. Après 10 ans des libéraux, les prix sont trop élevés. Mark Carney est en train d'échouer les Canadiens avec un taux d'inflation, le coût de la vie, les taxes et les impôts et l'immigration qui est hors de contrôle. Après 10 ans, Mark Carney a dit qu'il allait être différent encore. Il est encore pire que Trudeau, encore plus coûteux et encore plus incompétent. Nous avons besoin d'un leadership conservateur pour défendre nos communautés dans les régions, nos consommateurs et nos familles. Et c'est pour ça que nous allons défendre votre droit d'avoir un véhicule à l'essence et de vous remettre au volant. My friends, it's time to put Canadians back in charge of their lives. And, it brings back a lot of not just memories of those road trips and the visit to the farm, but when we used to come out here from Calgary, driving that distance to visit family here, my parents told me that the opportunity in this country was as big as the prairie sky, that if I wanted something in life, I just had to work hard for it, and it was possible here in Canada. That's the country that we've lost over the last 10 years. But the good news is we as Conservatives are going to fight to restore that great Canadian promise so that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work pays off. And whether you come from a farm in the prairies or an assembly line in the manufacturing belt of Ontario, ou vous êtes un fermier au Québec, or if you are a fisherman from out east, If you work hard, you can have a great life, build a beautiful future for your family. That's what Conservatives are working to build, and that's what we will be fighting for when we get back on the floor of the House of Commons in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Hi, Mia Holowichuk with CKOM News.
Hi there.
Hi. Our Premier's been calling to lift the electric vehicle levies since before the election. If that's something that doesn't go through, what is your stance on it? And would you want to call for anything else if that doesn't happen, like, say, revoking or reducing access to rare earth mineral mines or loans to the Chinese government?
Well, thank you very much. The electric vehicle mandate is that the Liberals are imposing on Canadians is a complete and utter disaster. It would cripple Saskatchewan and most of the prairie provinces. Rural communities in much of Canada would simply cease to exist over the next 10 years without the ability to use gas and diesel-powered vehicles. And it is not an exaggeration to say that Liberals are effectively banning rural life when they ban gas and diesel-powered trucks. That is why today we have announced that Conservatives are launching a nationwide campaign, including in the House of Commons, to force the Liberals to back down on the carny tax and the gas vehicle ban, to allow people to have the freedom to choose the vehicle that is most affordable and most effective for their lives, and to put Canadians back in the driver's seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Aiden Jagger, Saskatoon Star Phoenix. Do you support encouraging solar panel production in Canada, given our mineral resources and the global shift to renewable energy to help grow Canada's GDP?
So I support the free market. I believe that we should buy the energy that is most affordable for Canadian families. I don't believe that we should bring massive government subsidies or force Canadian consumers to pay higher electrical and power bills to subsidize solar panels or any other particular type of energy production. We need to harvest our resources in this country. We have cheap, affordable natural gas. We have hydroelectricity here in Saskatchewan. We have the biggest supply of uranium anywhere on Earth, something Corey Tucker, our nuclear energy critic, can tell anyone about. And those sources of energy are Canadian-made. They are affordable. My purpose when it comes to energy, we need low-cost energy. The best way to defeat poverty and expand the quality of living of our people is to have affordable, reliable energy using the massive abundance of resources we have beneath our feet. But unfortunately, Mark Carney is keeping in place Trudeau's anti-development laws, C-69, which makes it 19 years to get a mine approved. So how are we ever going to get the critical minerals and the uranium to the surface in order to power nukes? How are we going to get hydroelectric dams built when they have to go through 10 or 11 years of reviews by the federal government? How are we going to get natural gas production booming to supply generators for electricity and heat for our homes when Carney's anti-development laws keep everything in the ground? The reality is Mark Carney is not different than Justin Trudeau. He is worse. What we Conservatives are calling for is a Sovereignty Act, which will allow us to become energy independent. Let's legalize pipelines and rapid development by repealing C-69. Let's legalize shipping of oil off the North BC coast by repealing C-48. Let's get rid of the energy cap to produce more Canadian petroleum in Western Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Let's get rid of the industrial carbon tax to produce more at a lower cost. And of course, let's get rid of the Carney tax and let people drive any car or truck that they choose. That's what we're saying. Cheap energy, a powerful economy, a sovereign Canada.
Thank you. Next question.
Oh, hi. Jeremy Warren from CBC Saskatchewan here. My question is about canola tariffs. And, should Canada reduce or repeal its tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles if it would help reduce Chinese tariffs on canola? And what kind of support should the federal government be providing canola producers?
Well, first of all, let's recognize that China's tariffs on our canola producers are totally unjustified. They had already targeted our beef producers before there were any electric vehicle tariffs imposed on them. So the Chinese government has mistreated our economy for many years. I believe the first thing we should do is cancel the $1 billion federal loan that Mark Carney is extending to BC Ferries to have them buy Chinese ships. Mark Carney is giving $1 billion of shipbuilding contracts through a taxpayer-funded loan to the Chinese government and the Chinese economy. That is crazy. At a time when they're targeting our farmers, I think we should look at ways we can penalize the regime in Beijing for targeting our farmers. I mean, so far, Mark Carney has said nothing about the canola producers. It's like he doesn't care about Western Canadian producers. You know, I had my team check his Twitter account. He hasn't tweeted a single thing about canola, yet he's been able to tweet about International Cat Day. So isn't that nice? You know, we need a Prime Minister who will actually stand up for all Canadians, including and especially our prairie producers. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Le gouvernement chinois nous a ciblés avec des tarifs contre le canola et des autres produits canadiens, et des tarifs et des interdictions des produits agricoles de Canada étaient déjà en place avant que le gouvernement canadien avait mis des tarifs sur les voitures électriques chinois. Moi, je trouve ça aberrant. Et tout d'abord, je pense qu'on devrait repliquer en annulant le contrat du gouvernement fédéral, le prêt d'1 milliard de dollars que le gouvernement fédéral fournit aux BC Ferries pour acheter des grands navires provenant de la Chine. Moi, je crois qu'on devrait aussi trouver des autres façons de cibler l'économie chinoise afin de contrer l'attaque contre nos agriculteurs. Malheureusement, Mark Carney a montré une faiblesse monumentale. C'est pour ça que les autres pays croient pouvoir cibler le Canada. Ils ne voient aucune conséquence. Les Américains nous frappent avec des tarifs, les Chinois nous frappent avec des tarifs. Le Premier ministre ne fait aucun progrès pour ouvrir des autres marchés outre-mer afin de diversifier nos marchés. Donc, les pays du monde croient pouvoir nous attaquer sans conséquence. Nous avons besoin d'annuler le prêt d'1 milliard de dollars provenant du gouvernement fédéral pour punir Pékin et pour contrer les tarifs que Pékin essaie d'imposer sur nos agriculteurs dans l'Ouest canadien. I should just say, I think that what Beijing's latest attack on our economy shows is that countries smell weakness. Mark Carney has been failing. He's failed. He's backed down. He's made concession after concession vis-a-vis the Americans. He broke his promise to have a deal on July 21st. He was sent packing by the Mexican government when he tried to get a deal with them. He's got no new deals with Europe. And so the countries of the world think that they can walk all over us because of the weak leadership of Mark Carney. We need a strong leadership that stands up for this country and protects our farmers, our businesses, and our workers.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Gates Gorin, Global News. A question just from our national desk in regards to the Alberta by-election. Can you stay on as leader if you win the by-election with less of a vote share than former MP Damien Carrick?
Well, listen, we're going to continue to work hard through to Monday, and the people of Battle River Crowfoot are going to decide whether they want strong national leadership for the local issues that affect their lives. It's going to take national leadership to reverse Carney's ban on your gas truck or car. National leadership to defend our hunters and sport shooters' right to keep their property. National leadership to get pipelines built so that communities like Hardisty and all of the smaller communities who rely on oil and gas jobs can come roaring back to life. National leadership to stand up for our farmers, and I'm encouraging people to vote to advance their local issues by having a strong national voice in the forthcoming by-election, it would be a privilege to champion the people who feed, power, and protect our country from Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, Keenan Sorakan with CTV News here in Saskatoon. You mentioned the Prime Minister's lack of response to this new canola tariff. Given the hit that this could have to the Canadian economy, do you feel the federal government would have responded by now if this were an Ontario or a Quebec-based industry?
Of course. I mean, this Liberal government couldn't care less about the West. They disrespect its main industries. They don't. The Liberals don't care about Western farmers and Western producers. We see Mark Carney has kept in place all of the anti-energy laws that keep our oil and gas in the ground, and they continue to divide the country with real national consequences. And that's why we need a strong national voice, someone who was raised in Calgary, Alberta, who will actually champion the people of the prairies and Western Canada. The era of telling the West to pay up and shut up must come to an end, and we need a Prime Minister who will fight for all of the regions of this country.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Kira Miller with CJWW. The forestry sector received some federal support about a week ago. It's a similar size to the canola industry, yet we don't see any support here. Do you feel the prairies are being treated unfairly?
I do, yes. I think I'm 100% behind the auto workers, steel workers, aluminum workers, and forestry workers. Obviously, we should back them up because they have faced unfair tariffs from the United States. But the same support and attention should be given to our farmers. You know, it's been months now that the regime in Beijing has targeted our Western producers, and we've had nothing from Ottawa. You know, why aren't the tariffs from the government is collecting on Chinese EVs and other Chinese products being flowed back to the canola producers in Western Canada? You know, there's a tariff dispute with the Chinese government. The money raised by the Canadian government in that dispute should go back to the people who are paying the bills, paying the price, and that, of course, is mostly our canola producers. So it's time for the federal government to start treating the prairies and Western Canada with the respect people here deserve. It's time for a strong voice to stand up for the West.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Moi, je suis 100% en arrière les travailleurs en aluminium, en acier, en foresterie. Et oui, bien sûr, le gouvernement devrait appuyer ces travailleurs-là à cause des tarifs non justifiables auxquels ils font face. Mais en même temps, il n'y a rien pour les agriculteurs depuis les tarifs que le gouvernement chinois a appliqués à nos producteurs. Le gouvernement fédéral ne fait rien. Ça montre un manque de respect. Les tarifs qui sont récoltés par le fédéral devraient être acheminés, en partie au moins, aux agriculteurs qui sont frappés par des tarifs non justifiables provenant de la Chine. Et c'est pour ça que je veux être une grande voix pour défendre les intérêts de tous les agriculteurs à travers le Canada, y compris au Québec. On doit être juste pour tout le monde dans toutes les régions du Canada.
Thank you. That concludes this press conference.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone. All right.
Alors, Pierre Poilievre, qui est en Saskatchewan.
Grew up delivering the Calgary Sun. I think we have some Sun people here. We have the Dinger. Rick Bell grew up reading the Dinger, and Rick has lost some weight since then. Rick looks great. I delivered his paper. I also got a chance to work at the Calgary Stampede, worked over at TELUS Communications, and my story is I was raised by a couple of school teachers, and you know, my memories of that time, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, is that though we didn't have a ton of money and we went through hard times like everyone did, particularly in the early 80s, we always had enough for meat and potatoes on the dinner table. We had a nice house in the suburbs with our own yard. our own dog. I was even able to, my folks were able to save up enough to get me registered for hockey in my early, around 12 or 13 years old, a little late, too late to make the NHL, but so I had to settle for politics. But the great thing was, above and beyond all of the particulars of our material existence, was the promise for the future, the hope. My folks always told me, you want it, you work for it, and you can have it. That's the great thing about Canada. If you work hard, you get a great life. And I think my friends Jasraj Singh Halan, Delwinder Gill, Pat Kelly, Amanpreet Gill, David McKenzie, all have similar stories from their childhoods in this area. And I know, for example, Jazz grew up here, I think you were, was it Bowness? Or?
It was in the Northeast, in
Whitehorn, and grew up modest means, but was able to get a great education, start his own business, build homes, and have a great career, and now is the pride of his entire community. And I think every one of these MPs can share the same story. That was the deal in Canada, but that deal is broken after 10 years of Liberal inflation. They've doubled housing costs, doubled lineups at food banks, and what do you know? That coincided with them doubling the national debt. When you borrow and print money, you drive up the cost of everything and destroy the working class. Now, for the first time in the history of Canada, our young people cannot afford homes. We have an entire generation of youth who believe they will never be able to afford a place to live. Food bank lineups are up to 2.2 million. CBC was trying to comfort us just yesterday with a news story saying, hey, good news, you can get more affordable food if you go to this special shopping mart where they sell you food that's past the best before date. So now you can buy rotten food, and and you'll be able to afford it. So that is the CBC's solution to Liberal food price inflation, which gets worse and worse every single day. Now 20% of Canadians are skipping bills because they have to put the money to higher grocery costs. This is the unnecessary result of Liberal policies. And before we go blaming some exterior factor, let's be clear. Food prices in Canada are rising 50% faster than in the United States. We are the only country, according to the food professor, that has had 4 consecutive quarters of food prices rising faster than the Bank of Canada's target. This after Mark Carney promised that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Well, so much for that promise. He's broken every single promise he made. He promised the fastest growing economy in the G7. He's delivered the fastest shrinking economy. He promised that he would negotiate a win and a deal with Trump by July 21st. Still no win, still no deal, still no elbows, still no jobs. He promised to double home building. Home building is expected to drop by 13%. He promised that we would have develop our resources and increase investment. According to his own budget documents, investment has dropped in every one of the quarters since he became Prime Minister 8 months ago. He promised that he would spend less. And of course, that is the biggest broken promise at all. We now see Carney's costly credit card budget. He doubles Trudeau's deficit. You know, it's almost unthinkable. No one thought anyone could spend more money than Justin Trudeau. But Mark Carney said, hold my beer. And he came along with a deficit that is twice the size of the one that Justin Trudeau left behind. A deficit of $78 billion is the biggest in history outside of COVID, $16 billion bigger than Carney promised during the election. It is almost all due to increased spending, not due to tariffs from abroad. In fact, Mr. Carney has brought in $150 billion of new spending and offset by the promised savings that he says he will achieve over the next 5 years. It's a net increase of $90 billion. Almost all of it is on operating expenditures, not on capital investments. This is with a doubling deficit, the biggest non-COVID deficit in Canadian history. Mark Carney has introduced a credit card budget that will drive up your cost of food, housing, and fuel. And that is why Conservatives unanimously oppose it. Furthermore, the costly Carney credit card budget will also increase taxes on farmers, food, and home building. So you got an industrial carbon tax, which the budget proposes to raise. Well, that applies. I was just in Stettler yesterday and saw all the steel that goes into farming, on the tractors, the combines, the bins, the barns, all of that will become more expensive because of Carney's carbon tax, which he promises to more than double in this budget. Carney's industrial carbon tax on farmers is a tax on your food. That same carbon tax will apply to steel, aluminum, glass, concrete, cement, and other home building supplies. I have a former home builder here in Jazraj Halan, and he can tell you that when you tax the things that go into homes, you tax homes. The industrial carbon tax of Mark Carney is a tax on homes, a tax on food and homes. Why don't you tell us what that will mean to the cost of a new home, Jazz?
Thanks, Leader. After 10 years of this Liberal government, home ownership is unattainable. You can ask any of the young Canadians where a majority of them have just given up on home ownership altogether. This country used to be a place where certainly my family, when we moved here, and subsequent years after that, even as a home builder, until the Liberals took over, one income could get you a good living. You would be able to scrap money together and save up for a down payment. But after 10 years of the Liberals, all of that is gone. That Canadian dream of being able to owning a home, raising a family, it's all gone. And it's because the cost of everything has just skyrocketed, and this budget does nothing for home building that's going to improve it. As the Leader said, by introducing this industrial carbon tax from before and promising to raise the price on that, the more input costs into the home building is only going to make things worse. On top of all that, this is the same Liberal government that spent about $90 billion they committed to home building, only to double home costs, housing costs. And now they're creating a fourth bureaucracy. The first three got us to this point. It's unfathomable that they would create a fourth bureaucracy to make home building slow down even worse. In fact, their own housing agency has said that home building starts are going to decrease this year and next year. And that is scary because that Canadian dream that everyone wants to be able to own a home is going to be unattainable. As a former home builder, we need to get the bureaucracy out of the way. We need to lower the government costs and make sure that builders are able to build, buyers are able to buy. But today, under the Liberals, after 10 years, builders can't build, buyers can't buy, and sellers can't sell. Only a Conservative government under Pierre Poilievre will fire those gatekeepers and make sure home building is attainable so we can bring back that Canadian dream where Canada is affordable and safe once again.
There you go. Thank you. And if you don't believe Jazz and I, then listen to the Home Building Association itself, Build, B-I-L-T, out of Toronto. They quote, I'm quoting them to say, what was once a promise to deliver 500,000 new homes annually has now become a plan that will cost 100,000 jobs. Canadians are now facing the prospect of a worsening crisis that will impact housing supply, employment, economic activity, and ultimately middle-class families. So this budget, which increases home building taxes, risks 100,000 home building jobs, according to the people who actually build homes. I have here a quote from Fitch Budget. Fitch, the credit rating agency, and they say that this deficit, which Mark Carney has doubled, will now threaten our credit rating. Let me just bring in the chair of our shadow cabinet economic affairs subcommittee, small businessman and member of parliament, Pat Kelly.
Well, thank you, Pierre. This budget does nothing to deal with the cost of living crisis that Canadians are enduring right now, because it just piles on more debt that fuels the inflation that is driving up the cost of living. At $78.3 billion, this is nearly double the deficit that less than a year ago was considered to be so high that it precipitated a crisis in the resignation of the last finance minister. So what was an unthinkably high deficit less than a year ago, the new prime minister has nearly doubled. And this is just going to drive up the cost of living, driving up inflation. We had expert testimony at the Finance Committee last week that talked about the break glass emergency of productivity in Canada. And low productivity means higher cost of living. It means that people cannot their paychecks are not keeping up with the higher cost of living. Canada's productivity is at the bottom of the OECD. Our per capita GDP over the 10-year period of this government has not increased. We are at the bottom of the OECD and the G7 for per capita GDP over this time period. And there's no relief for, there's no solution for the productivity crisis in this budget. There are no meaningful fiscal anchors because this government breaks every fiscal anchor that it ever assigns to itself. So this budget is not a solution, and Conservatives like Pierre Poilievre have been sounding the alarm bell for years on this.
Thank you, Pat. And again, if you don't believe Pat and I, then you'll believe Fitch, which said Canada's proposed budget announced in Parliament November 4th underscores the erosion of the federal government's finances while Canada's rating is broadly stable. Persistent fiscal expansion and a rising debt burden have weakened its credit profile and could increase rating pressure over the medium term. The budget expands the forecast federal deficit to $78.3 billion. General government deficits of 3.3% of GDP, which is higher than the AA median of 2.3 and substantially higher than Canada's pre-pandemic deficits, which averaged 0.4 in the prior decades. And finally, it says that combined with the sizable non-budgetary financing needs, the higher deficit will substantially increase general government debt, which is forecast to be 92% of GDP in 2025, up from 88.6% in 2024, before accelerating to 98.5% by 2027, nearly double the forecast AA median of 49.6. Now, those are a lot of numbers, but let's cut right down to it. To be a AA rated country, on average, your debt to GDP is 49.6%. Carney's on track to bring ours to nearly 100%. In other words, our debt as a share of GDP will be almost twice the size of the average AA country. That's the kind of fiscal mess that Mark Carney and the Liberals are creating. So much for he's gone from promising to be a brilliant economist to being the most costly, reckless, and risky Prime Minister in Canadian history, and that is why Conservatives will oppose it. But we not only oppose, we propose. Our proposal is to cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, corporate welfare, handouts to phony refugees, and other wasted money so we can bring down debt, taxes, and inflation. We would get rid of the industrial carbon tax to unlock the industrial engine of our nation and to reduce the price of everything made with steel, aluminum, cement, concrete, glass. That is everything that we buy. We will cap government spending for a dollar-for-dollar law, requiring we find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. We'll make this the fastest place on earth to get a building permit, repeal the anti-energy laws, use the powers in C5 to rapidly approve a pipeline to the Pacific so we can get 1 million barrels of oil to Asia every single day. We will get rid of the capital gains tax on anyone who reinvests their money in Canada to bring home the $500 billion of net investment that Mark Carney and the Liberals have sent fleeing to the United States of America. We will cut income tax so hard work pays off. We will get rid of all home building taxes, not only to provide affordable homes to the next generation, but also to bring back the 100,000 trades jobs so carpenters can swing hammers, framers can frame homes, loggers can harvest lumber, and we can build a tariff-proof industry back to life in this country. That is how we restore the promise that I enjoyed as a young Calgary kid, delivering the sun door to door in my adolescence. Is how we're going to give every single kid in this country the opportunity that we had. We're going to have opportunity and freedom for our youth, home ownership for our families, and of course, security for our wonderful seniors. That is our vision, our hopeful future, and now let's get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now questions from the floor.
Hi, Matthew Skase, Globe and Mail. You've yet to address last week's floor crossing and departure from caucus. Chris D'Entremont said your leadership is why he crossed the floor. How do you respond to comments that your caucus is not united right now?
Well, first of all, I just quote Mr. d'Entremont, who said, and I quote, "Since I first elected here in 2019, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Even then, families in Nova Scotia, as it is now, as it was called at the time back, but is now Acadie and Annapolis, we're struggling. We warned that the Liberals out-of-control spending and massive deficits were irresponsible, but of course they did not listen. Now, after 6 months under the new Prime Minister Mark Carney, who promised fiscal discipline, Canadians are still waiting." He said, Mr. Carney said, I'm quoting Mr. d'Entremont here, Mr. Carney said he would be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%, said Mr. d'Entremont. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate, and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane for a G7 country, said Mr. d'Entremont of Liberal policies. He said, "We are a rich country. We are a food basket of a country. We can produce all the food for many people in the world, and we can barely feed ourselves for some reason," end quote. That is how Mr. d'Entremont described the outrageous cost of living as the direct result of Mark Carney's Liberals. I'm very saddened for the Nova Scotia families on whom Mr. Carney and Mr. d'Entremont are raising the price of groceries and homes, but that will not change our resolve to continue to fight for an affordable Canada, affordable budgets, and an affordable future. Thank you.
Et en français?
Merci beaucoup. Je vais juste citer, malheureusement, j'ai juste ces commentaires en français, mais M. d'Entremont a souligné qu'après 6 mois de Mark Carney, les libéraux ont brisé leurs promesses de discipline financière. Ils ont augmenté le coût de l'épicerie, que M. Carney, malgré ses promesses d'être jugé par le prix des épiceries, les Canadiens sont en attente pour la nourriture abordable et que le prix de nourriture a augmenté de 40% depuis l'arrivée au pouvoir. Malheureusement, à cause de M. Carney et M. d'Entremont, les familles de Nouvelle-Écosse vont devoir payer plus pour leurs épiceries et pour les maisons. Malgré ces promesses brisées, nous, les conservateurs, allons continuer de travailler pour un pays abordable, un budget abordable et une vie abordable pour tous les Canadiens.
Rick Bell, Postmedia.
Hey, Rick. Do we still call you the Dinger?
Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me for dinner.
Okay.
We've been told in Alberta for weeks, if not months, that on Grey Cup week, that we would get a win in Alberta. And that win would be a pipeline to the West Coast. It would be significant commitment to action on the so-called 9 bad laws. And that would all happen Grey Cup week. That is to say, tomorrow. We are also told somehow there might be some sort of memorandum of understanding between the province of Alberta and Carney. That's just floating out there. I don't know if that's confirmed. What are your thoughts? Because for weeks, months, we've been promised that Grey Cup week, the stamps aren't in, neither is Edmonton, but that Alberta would get a win on both of those files.
Well, tomorrow, it reminds me when you go into the pub, the Liberals are like that pub that has that sign on the wall that says free beer tomorrow. And so you come back the next day and it still says free beer tomorrow. And you keep coming back day after day for the promise of free beer, and the price of beer continues to rise and rise and rise. So they keep telling us that something is going to happen tomorrow. Mark Carney's been Prime Minister for 8 months, promising to move at, quote, unimaginable speeds. And yet, there's not a single project that he has launched that was not already in the making or approved before he took office. Mark Carney needs to do only one thing for us to get a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. There are trillions of dollars of international investment crying out for the chance to build that pipeline without any government support. All they need is the federal government to stop blocking it. Get out of the way and repeal the 9 bad laws that block energy projects. get out of the way and remove the ban on shipping oil off the northwest coast of BC, a ban that only applies to Canadians because, of course, American tankers can travel between Alaska and California in those very same waters, so why not allow Canadians to do the same? Get out of the way and get rid of the liberal industrial carbon tax so that we can actually produce enough oil to fill a future pipeline. Get out of the way, Mark Carney, and do it now. It has been 8 months. We don't need Mark Carney to put on a hard hat and hold another photo op. He's had countless photo ops in the last 8 months, while investment flees and our industrial sector leaves to the United States of America. He's not got shovels in the ground on anything. Now, I suspect there will be some sort of quote-unquote memorandum. You know something? Memorandums don't pay the bills. We need shovels in ground. So Mark Carney should get out of the way and tell us on what date will shovels be in the ground on a new million-barrel-a-day pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Prince Rupert or Kitimat, British Columbia. That's all he's got to do. Give us the date, show us where the shovel will hit the ground, and tell us on when it will happen. That is what we need to have. Get out of the way, Mark Carney. Monsieur, apparemment, demain, on va avoir les nouvelles. Avec les libéraux, c'est toujours demain. C'est comme le bar où ils ont une pancarte qui dit demain, il va y avoir de bière gratuite. Mais on arrive le lendemain et ça dit toujours que c'est demain que la bière deviendra gratuite. Mais toujours, chaque jour, le prix augmente. Et c'est la même chose avec les ressources naturelles. Depuis son arrivée au pouvoir, il y a 8 mois, avec la promesse qu'il allait bâtir des choses avec une vitesse inimaginable. Il n'y a pas un seul projet en construction aujourd'hui qui n'était pas déjà là avant l'arrivée au pouvoir de M. Carney. M. Carney a besoin de faire une chose, se débarrasser du chemin. Il y a des billions de dollars privés prêts à bâtir des oléoducs, des pipelines, des mines, des ports, et j'en passe. Mais les lois libéraux bloquent ces projets. Il faut enlever les 9 lois anti-développement des libéraux pour libérer le chemin et permettrait aux investisseurs d'investir, aux constructeurs de construire, et aux travailleurs de travailler. Donc, enlever les libéraux du chemin et permettrait notre économie d'être le plus riche et abordable au monde. Merci beaucoup.
Hey, Tim Brooks, CTV. You lost 2 MPs the week of the budget. One cited your leadership as a reason for leaving. I just want to put Carney and the Liberals to the side here and just ask you personally.
Of course you do.
Does this say anything about your leadership? Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada where our people who work hard can afford a home and food. That is my agenda. And I will just quote Mr. d'Entremont when he speaks about Mark Carney. He says, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting. He said that he would be judged by the cost of groceries at the store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. He said this only a few months ago. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices are up 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane, said Mr. d'Entremont, for a G7 country. So he said that Liberal food price inflation under Mark Carney was inhumane, and I couldn't agree more. And I feel badly for the inhumane conditions, to use his own words, that he is now supporting for his own constituents. But I won't just quote him. I'll quote Nate Erskine Smith, a Liberal MP, who now says that his children should not have to pay for Mark Carney's budget. Let me see here. Now to the bad and more fairly, where expectations were set at a level we failed to meet, including on the question of generational investments. The budget falls short of these specific promises in our platform, and it unfortunately falls well short of the wartime home-building effort that many of us thought we'd deliver. It's certainly not a budget that should throw us into an election on an uncertain time, but it does not live up to its promise of generational investments. He goes on to say, this is Mr. Nate Erskine-Smith, a Liberal MP, that Mark Carney has broke his promise to spend less, with $90 billion of new spending, only 36% of which is actually capital. The rest is more costs. So when you have a Liberal MP attacking the costly credit card budget that Mr. Carney has put forward, then we see turmoil in the Liberals, and I know that there will be wall-to-wall coverage on CTV of this turmoil, of a Liberal MP criticizing his own budget days before the vote. I know you're camped outside his office right now, waiting to get comment from him. I know you've been chasing Mark Carney down hallways to find out what he has to say. I mean, it's just been the relentless coverage that you will have of this dissent within the Liberal Party. I understand also there's former Liberal Minister Guilbeault is unhappy with the environmental policies, that while he supports raising costs, he doesn't think they raise them enough. We've got Wilkinson is unhappy. So I know that I'm looking forward to seeing the wall-to-wall coverage on CTV of all of the costly turmoil in the Liberal budget. So I will be tuning in tonight to watch your newscast. Thank you.
Hi there, Sydney Fazard with Rebel News. Last year it was reported RCMP published a secret report suggesting Canadians may revolt once we realize how broke we are. This year, under Prime Minister Carney, we're approaching a $100 billion deficit. How close are Canadians to a breaking point?
Well, many are already broken. That's not the only report. The Liberal government, there was a leaked report that came out through Blacklocks. Got very little media coverage, but it said basically liberal policies had us on track so that Canadians will have to forage and hunt for food because they can't afford groceries. Like, this is in Canada. This is the talk that you would expect in an impoverished, overpriced third world economy. But that is the trajectory that the Liberals have us on. And this costly credit card budget of Mark Carney will make that even worse. Canadians can't afford life. They are absolutely desperate. Go into our streets and talk to people. Ask them about their lives. Their lives are falling apart because they cannot afford this costly government. And it is leading to major breakdown. Go onto the street not far from here. There's an encampment where people who've lost hope and have been broken are now addicted to fentanyl and are dying face first on the pavement on our streets. These are the real issues. This is why I'm in politics, to fight to give back the promise of our country that every single Canadian, whether they're a waitress, a welder, or a businessman, can have a good plate of food every single night, live in a nice house on a safe street. That's why we're in this business.
Thank you. Last question.
Aaron Collins, CBC. So Chris d'Entremont, just turning back to last week, said that your party is being run like a frat house. So I'm just curious what you think he means by that, and if you think
well, I think that CBC had to be. Are you with CBC, by the way?
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'm just curious if you think that that could lead to more MPs leaving your caucus, and what you think he means by that.
Well, first of all, CBC has had to correct the falsehoods that they put into that story. So I encourage you to tell Canadians about the falsehoods you published and explain why you did that. But I would ask if you agree with Mr. d'Entremont, or you believe he was telling the truth when he said, and I'm going to quote, "Now, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting." He said that he would be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate, and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane for a G7 country. Mr. d'Entremont said that Liberal food price inflation is inhumane. Do you believe that he was telling the truth when he said that? Yes. Oh, you can.
Want to ask any questions?
I did already. I already said that your report from CBC was wrong, and we have corrected the record. We put out a statement. We stand by the statement. But I have a statement here from Mr. d'Entremont. He says, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate, and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane in a G7 country. Do you agree with Mr. d'Entremont that Mark Carney's food price inflation is inhumane?
So again, I asked you if you thought that if what you thought Mr. d'Entremont meant by your party being run like a frat house, whether or not you thought that would lead to more MPs leaving your caucus. That's the question for you, sir.
No. So I answered your question. And so the answer that I have back to you is that Mr. d'Entremont this is a quote from just a few months ago, where he said that Liberal food price inflation was inhumane. And you know what? He's right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference.
And Dan, you all know as an incredible entrepreneur who founded a great business, merged it with another one, leads 3,000 incredible employees. But of course, his biggest achievement is as a father, 6 kids. He took go forth and multiply literally. And recently he had a little one, baby Sadie, him and Morgan. And there was a tense moment after baby Sadie was born. She came out, and the dreadful silence. No cry, no murmur, no nothing. And Morgan and Dan didn't know what was happening. The doctor said, "Don't worry, I know exactly what to do." He picked up baby Sadie and whispered something in her ear, and out came a roar, as if from a lioness. And the baby went on to cry for hours and hours without stopping. Later that day, Dan went to the doctor and said, "What did you tell my poor little girl that made her cry so much?" And he said, "I just told her that her share of the national debt is $32,000. So, but in all truth, the story of Genuity and ultimately Canaccord is the story of great Canadian enterprise. Not just Canadian business, but enterprise of all kinds. It's the story of someone who has an idea, takes a risk, mortgages his house, works all day and all night, wonders how he's going to meet the payroll, only to build something successful so that he can pay lots of tax to the silent partner, which is the government. But more than that, to create more competition and vibrance, to serve more customers, to finance more deals, to make it possible for factories, mines, pipelines, high-tech enterprises to get the upfront money that is needed to start. And that story bleeds over to the story of the worker who struggles through poverty to get a trade and get a job, maybe join the United Association of Pipe Fitters, who are represented here by Nathan Bergstand, and work hard building the country. We've all been blessed, those of us in this room, to grow up in the best country on earth, a country that we were raised to believe was filled with limitless possibility, that if we worked hard, we could have a great life, we could start at the bottom and climb to the top, that in this country, anything was possible, and that it didn't matter where you started, it mattered where you were going, it didn't matter who you knew, it mattered what you can do. And this country can be that again. In fact, my firm belief is with the resources we have beneath our feet, the land we have across our country, and the people who populate that majestic land, we should be the richest country on planet Earth, and that should be our goal. Think about it. We got the 3rd biggest supply of oil. We're the 5th in natural gas. Number 1 in uranium and potash. We have the longest oceanic coastline, the most fresh water anywhere on Earth. We have by far the shortest shipping distance from the Americas to both Europe and Asia. We have the cold weather to reduce the cost of these massive data centers. We have the energy to power those centers. We have literally everything it takes to have the highest quality of living. And those kinds of resources and the economic data that flows from it means real things to real people. In such an economy, it would be easy for young people to afford homes. Single mothers would walk down grocery aisles and fill their cart with the things they want their children to eat, not the things that they can afford and don't have to turn back when they get to the checkout because the prices are too high. A country like the one I've described would mean that everybody would own a home with a yard, and every single night there'd be meat and potatoes on the dinner table. Those are the practical benefits that come from having a strong economy that produces low-cost but high-quality goods. That was the promise of Canada. But that promise is now broken. Look around you. Housing costs have more than doubled in the last 10 years, rising faster than in any other G7 country. In fact, housing prices have increased about 30% faster than incomes, the biggest gap of any OECD nation. We now have an entire generation, for the first time ever, that believes they will never be able to afford a home. This has never happened before. Food bank use has more than doubled in the last 10 years. One food bank leader said that it took a century and a half to get to 1 million visits a month. And in the last 5 years, that number has more than doubled to 2.2 million. So in 5 years, we have added more monthly food bank users than we had in the previous 150 years. To show the human cost of this, today a poll came out saying 20% of Canadians are not paying their bills so that they can afford to feed their families. We have malnutrition. We have 10% of our country that told a food bank survey recently that they are skipping meals sometimes for an entire day because they can't afford to eat. This, of course, is the result of a costly government. Costly government drives up the cost of living. Now, in the last election, Mark Carney promised that he was going to be different. The Liberal Party was, see, the lights are going out because the energy prices are so high. It's that industrial carbon tax again. But Mr. Carney was going to be the tight-fisted banker. He was going to be nothing like Justin Trudeau. He made so many promises. And yet, what have been the results of all these promises? First, he promised that he would negotiate a win with the Americans. By July 21st, he would have a deal. Still no win, still no deal, still no elbows, still no jobs. Here we are, after he promised that he would, quote-unquote, invest more. This week's budget showed that investment has collapsed in all 3 fiscal quarters for which he has been Prime Minister. He said he'd double home building. Now his government agency, the CMHC, says home building will drop by 13% over the next several years. And he said that he would spend less. That was one of his 2-word slogans. He was after me for having 3-word slogans. His were just 2, so he was at least more parsimonious with words. But spend less. Did you see the budget? The deficit is 100% more. He's literally doubled the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind for this year and for the next 5 years. The deficit, as Dan pointed out, this year will be $78 billion, twice the $41 billion that Trudeau had projected, $16 billion higher than Carney promised during the election campaign. And over the next 5 years, the government expects, and this is without any new spending in any of those 4 future budgets, they expect to add $1/3 of $1 trillion of additional debt. This will be the most costly 5 years, if it is allowed to happen, in any of Canada's history. And make no mistake, this is not due to the falling revenue from the trade war. It is due to increased government spending. Mr. Carney has added $141 billion of new spending measures. These are decisions by his government to add new costs that were not budgeted before, in exchange for which he promises to find about $50 billion of savings. So even if he keeps his promise to find the savings and to contain the spending at the aforementioned levels, that will mean a net increase in costs of $90 billion, which works out to about $5,400 for every family in Canada. And let's not make any mistake. Canadians will pay for this. The government has no money. It cannot give you anything it does not take away. Every dollar the government spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more they spend, the more things cost. They only have three ways of paying for things: with taxes, with debt, and with money printing inflation. Either way, the Canadian people get the bill. And this promise-breaking budget by Mark Carney is the single most expensive for Canadians, who will be paying the price in higher food costs, higher home prices, and other increases in their cost of living. So today I'd like to present you with the contrasting vision that the Liberals and the Conservatives have on our economy. Let's start with costs and with the fiscal well-being of our people. So we all agree, everyone agrees, that life is too expensive in Canada today. Housing is the most expensive in the G7, for example. Food prices now are prohibitive to the point where people are at food banks. So the question is, how do we make things more affordable? Well, our approach is to address the core problem, which is the government itself. When government runs massive deficits and prints money to pay for it, the resulting increase in the monetary mass bids up the cost of everything you buy. If you have an economy with, say, 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. If you double the dollars to 20, and you still only have 10 apples, you're not twice as rich. It's just that each apple costs twice as much. The money supply has grown from about 1.8 trillion to 2.6 trillion in the last 5 years. That's a 40% increase in the money supply, during which time the economy grew by roughly 4 or 5%. So when you grow the money supply 10 times faster than the stuff that money buys, prices get bid up and everything costs more. Compounding that is the industrial carbon tax, numerous other hidden taxes, high income tax, and the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. Mr. Carney's solution to that problem is to create a whole bunch of new government programs to redistribute back money that he ultimately took away from families. Well, why not just reverse the damage the government did in the first place? Why not bring down the deficit by cutting bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, corporate welfare, handouts to fake and fraudulent asylum claimants, and other the money that the $26 billion that we spend on consultants? We could cut that back to the levels that it was at just 10 years ago, bringing down the cost of government. Why not bring in the dollar-for-dollar law, a very simple rule that you follow in your businesses and that seniors, single moms, and small businesses all follow, which is that every time you bring in a new dollar of spending, the government and its ministers should be obliged by law to find an equal dollar of savings. That would require politicians go into the line items of the departments to dig out the waste, optimize spending, and achieve value for money. By bringing down the deficits, we would no longer have to print the cash, and we could reduce the burden on the Canadian people that inflation has inflicted. That is the approach that we would take. But then there are specific things like food. There are at least 3 hidden food taxes that are already ballooning the cost of living. There's the industrial carbon tax, which applies on the steel and the fertilizer that goes into farm production. Every tractor, every combine, every bin is more expensive because of the industrial carbon tax. All the processing facilities, their conveyor belts go up in price. The fertilizer is hit with an industrial carbon tax. That then gets passed on to the food buyer at the grocery store. Then there's the food labeling tax, effectively a ban on single-use plastics, which means food spoils about 5 days faster, and it costs $400 more in groceries every year because of lost and wasted food. And then you have the fuel standard tax, a very well-hidden tax that is slowly increasing diesel and gas prices on farmers and truckers, which ultimately gets passed on to the people. We as Conservatives proposed a positive idea: get rid of every single one of these taxes to bring down the cost of farm production and therefore bring down the cost of food for Canadians. We believe low taxes on food. Food is an essential. It shouldn't be taxed. The production of food from the farm gate to your dinner plate should be tax-free. Next, homes. Why is it that we have such expensive homes? We have by far the biggest landmass on which to build homes. We have 10 times as much more land to build on per capita as the next closest country. So why is it that housing is more expensive by far in Canada than any other G7 country? Why is it that Toronto and Vancouver are the most expensive markets in North America? We're in the south of the border. They have more income, more people on a smaller landmass. In other words, more demand and less landmassed supply, and they pay 25 to 35% less for a home. The answer is we can't get housing built in Canada. Government blocks home building and then subsidizes home building. This recent budget, let me just read directly from Build, the Build budget commentary. Build is a local association, I think based out of Toronto, that actually builds homes. What was once a promise to deliver 500,000 new homes annually has now become a plan that will cost 100,000 jobs. Canadians are facing the prospect of a worsening crisis that will impact housing supply, employment, economic activity, and ultimately middle-class families. Now, the government in this budget only increased housing costs by keeping in place the hidden taxes that drive up the cost of producing a home, and by offering a tiny and circumscribed rebate that almost no one qualifies for. They say you give you a rebate if you're a first-time buyer on a first-time home. But first-time buyers don't buy new homes. They buy resales because resales are more affordable. So 95% of home buyers will not get a penny from this rebate. You need to make the rebate available to all home buyers if it's going to count. And then we need to team up with the provinces and the municipalities to lower their home building taxes. In Ontario today, a third of the cost of a new home is just taxes. Another 20% is delays, consultants, lawyers, accountants, and others who don't actually swing any hammers or frame any housing. They simply add new administrative costs. More money from a new home today goes to bureaucrats in offices rather than the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who actually build the homes. Mr. Carney's solution to too much bureaucracy blocking home building is to create another bureaucracy, a new government agency in Ottawa that is supposedly going to build homes. Only there will not be a single carpenter or electrician who works in these departments. It will just be more bureaucrats adding new layers of bureaucracy. What we need to do is cut the bureaucracy, eliminate all taxes on home building, and use federal infrastructure funds to incentivize municipalities to cut development charges, wait times, and free up land so that we can build more homes for our kids. Then we go on to the issue of economic sovereignty. We have, of course, as I mentioned, the most resources in the world, but we can't get them to markets. And the biggest market to which we get them has a near monopoly on our most precious and, just in terms of dollar value, our biggest exports, oil and gas. Now, why is it that we don't have pipelines and more LNG plants on our coasts? The answer, again, is government obstacles. Government makes it next to impossible to get anything built. You've got C-69, the No New Pipelines law. It takes 19 years to get a mine approved in Canada. It takes 14 years to approve an LNG plant. We have added one LNG plant in the last decade, while the Americans have added 10, even though the economic case in Canada is much better. We have cold weather, which makes it cheaper by 25% to liquefy gas. It takes 11 days to ship to Asia from BC. It takes 20 days from the US Gulf Coast. In other words, we have a massive natural, geographic, and meteorological advantage, but they're building the LNG plants and we're not. Now, Mr. Carney's solution to too much government blocking our resource projects is to create another government department. So we have too much government blocking. We have a new government department that is supposed to help businesses get over that blockage. My answer would be that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Get rid of the bureaucracy that's blocking the projects in the first place. Let's repeal 6069. Let's legalize the shipping of Canadian oil off the northwest coast of BC, where it's already legal for Americans to ship oil between Alaska and California. We surely could do it better than them so that we can reach the 2.5 billion Asian customers who would be happy to pay world prices for our energy. Let's use C5, yes, a bill passed by the Liberals, to designate shovel-ready zones, pre-permitting to build LNG plants. We should aim to build 15 or 16 massive $40 billion LNG plants so that we can ship clean Canadian liquefied natural gas to shut down dirty coal-fired plants in Asia and ship it off to Europe to turn so that Europeans don't have to buy from Putin anymore. Then we can turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. In other words, get out of the way. And then there's the issue of investment. Obviously, we have, let's just address this issue of investment. Mr. Carney is saying that he needs to borrow money to invest. Let's be clear, this is not a new promise. This is precisely what the Liberals promised in 2015. They said they would have small deficits that they would use to invest and stimulate economic growth and productivity. 10 years later, they doubled the national debt, and what happened to investment? It fell by 11%. On a per capita basis, it's the biggest drop of any G7 country, the biggest drop in Canadian history. We have $15,000 of investment for Canadian worker, measured in USD, $28,000 of investment for each American worker, and $21,000 for each worker in the OECD. In other words, the Canadian worker is getting half the investment of the American worker and 30% less than the average OECD worker after all these deficits were put in place, supposedly to stimulate investment. And as I said, since Mr. Carney got in, investment has collapsed. Why is it that deficits don't lead to investment? Because very simply, everything comes from somewhere. When you borrow money out of the economy, you create an opportunity cost. The money that is lent to government for new excessive spending is money that will therefore not be invested in building a new factory, mine, pipeline, R&D facility. It's called the crowding out effect. And we saw it most prominently in Israel when they had huge deficits in the 1990s and investors could just sit back and buy bonds and get 6% with almost no risk. When the government reversed the policy, balanced its budget, the investors had to invest in productive enterprises, so they created the startup nation, the most technologically advanced nation on planet Earth. And now they have more companies on the NASDAQ than all European countries combined, even though Europe has 75 times as many people. In other words, paying down debt, balancing budgets actually requires investors to put their money to productive uses. If you allow huge deficits, all you do is cause malinvestment. You borrow the money out of this part of the economy, the productive side, and you spend it into this side of the economy, the unproductive governmental side. We don't need to redistribute more capital from private sector to government. We already have too much government as it is. We need a bigger, more robust, free enterprise business sector in this country. And that's what a balanced budget allows. And so why is the private sector not investing? Because our country is becoming increasingly uninvestable, with the second slowest building permits anywhere in the OECD, the countless obstacles to getting anything approved or done, and then the extremely high taxes, 50+% tax on our most successful people, very high taxes on energy, as I said, home building, on investment and work. That dissuades investment in our country. So my approach is very different than Mr. Carney's. His view is that we need more corporate welfare programs. So he punishes businesses with red tape and high taxes. Then he wants to create new government programs to subsidize those same businesses. So he blocks the business, then subsidizes the business. My view is, let's do neither. Let's stop blocking our entrepreneurs. For example, why not get rid of the capital gains tax for any proceeds that are reinvested here in Canada? That would create an economic boom. Why not have a big, broad write-off of money, profits that are reinvested in an enterprise in year one, instead of a tiny and carefully circumscribed one that is very hard to access? Why not, instead of giving out all of these new programs, why not use the money to cut taxes for all businesses? That way the politicians do not have to play winner and loser. And this is going to be a very interesting debate on the subject of stablecoins. The government did, to its credit, put a section in its budget book describing a plan in the future to come up with a stablecoin framework. Our view is that this must be a policy that leads to more competition and choice and lower costs for customers and vendors. It should not be used to further concentrate power in our payment systems or to create a central bank digital currency. Our view is that our system of payments is extremely slow. It takes multiple days to clear a transaction, and it costs 2 to 3% for the vendor. It should be a penny in a second to clear a transaction. And we will work with the government or with anybody in Parliament to make sure that the stablecoin framework that they're pushing forward leads to that extra competition and lower costs with a more smooth and competitive financial system. That is our approach on all issues. So what you really have as a difference between us, between the Carney Liberals and the Poilievre Conservatives is this, they believe in adding new obstacles for all of you and then asking you to go to them and ask for a handout to help you get over those same obstacles. It's like Ronald Reagan said, if a Liberal sees something that moves, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. And when it stops moving, they subsidize it. When in fact, we should do none of the above. We should get out of the way and off your back. Get out of the way and let our resource companies dig mines, build pipelines, expand ports, ship goods. Get out of the way and off the backs of our home builders by making home construction tax-free and quickly approved. Get out of the way and off the backs of our farmers and food processors to drive more food production. Get out of the way and off the backs of our entrepreneurs so that they can invent more, create more, and achieve more. We should be a country that honors and liberates the energies of all of our workers to produce affordable goods. Because the single most important thing right now for our country is to make life affordable for our people. And the only way to do that is to stop creating cash and start creating more of the things that cash buys. With a big, open, free enterprise economy that rewards hard work, honors achievement, celebrates entrepreneurs and success. Because this should be a nation where anybody who works hard can achieve their dreams, where we are sovereign and strong and that we can stare down tariffs from any nation because of our economic strength here at home. A nation not of gatekeepers and grandees, of rulers and rule makers, of tax collectors and toll masters, but instead a nation of entrepreneurs and explorers, artists and adventurers, pioneers and patriots, workers and warriors, all united for the promise of this country that anybody who works hard gets a beautiful, affordable house with meat and potatoes on the dinner table every night, on a safe street, under our proud flag, united for our home and native land. Thank you very much. God bless Canada. Thank you.
So I would now like to introduce our moderator for our candid fireside discussion. Please help me welcome Michael Liebrock from the Stronach Group. He's going to moderate a short fireside discussion.
Well, thank you, Pierre.
Good to be with you.
Very
You're looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Know,
fresh.
Most people come into this world, they're born, but Michael was actually chiseled out of a big block of marble, and you can see the what's the secret?
What's the secret? Dad bod. New dad bod.
It's impressive. I haven't seen a lot of dad bods like that, but anyway.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the Economic Club for bringing us together at such a pivotal time in Canada's economy. And I don't know if you know this or if our guests know this, but the Prime Minister is actually just a block away right now.
We should invite him over. We have a great chat.
Some great ideas he might be able to borrow.
That's right.
But, you know, Pierre, your event sold out faster and with more tickets. So for the economists in the room, I guess that's demand and the market has spoken. So maybe it's right here.
God bless free enterprise.
So Pierre, we're going to talk a little bit about policy, about politics and personal, but I want to start a little bit on personal. You and I are friends, but a lot of people in the audience are just still getting to know you. Your most important job outside of being leader of the opposition is as a committed father to Valentina and Cruz and a husband to the wonderful Anna. So my first question, you and Anna have been together for many years through campaigns, kids, and in the public eye. What has she taught you most through all of it?
Stay grounded. Definitely stay grounded. She comes from very humble beginnings. Obviously, she came as a refugee fleeing Venezuela, and they had to start from scratch. She was raised in a working class neighborhood in East End, Montreal, a tiny basement apartment, and she left home at 17, moved to Ottawa, worked at Best Buy, got a job in the West End of town selling electronics in English, even though she didn't speak English at the time. And that taught her how to solve problems and get things done. But she also reminds me that, no matter how high and mighty we in politics might think we are, it's the strivers like her family that we're working for. And our mission is to unlock their potential and give them the best possible lives. So she keeps me grounded and makes sure that the ego is always in check. And I think that's a healthy thing for any politician.
That's good to hear. She sounds like she'd be a great campaign manager.
She's not. She manages much more complicated operations, like getting the kids out the door in the morning, and producing. She produces an incredible magazine. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have.
A beautiful magazine, and she's a great writer, and she's founded her own businesses. So very talented, brilliant young woman.
Wonderful. And you said before that everything you do is about giving your kids and their generation the shot at the same opportunities that you had. What do you think has changed most for young families in Canada?
I just think the things that we used to take for granted are now out of reach, and the basic ambitions like starting a family, owning a house, having nutritious food every night, those are things that if you had a job at a university, you knew you would be able to do. But in the last 10 years, we've come to a place where it is literally impossible for youth to own homes in our biggest centers and increasingly even in our small towns. And that is totally unnecessary. I call it the promise of Canada. It's better than the American dream. American dream is kind of, you wake up from a dream, but a promise is something that is honored if you do your part of the bargain. Our youth today are doing more than their part of the bargain. They are working longer than probably any generation before them since the Second World War to get less and less. And I want to ensure that they know that they don't have to live like this. They can demand better from their country. They deserve homes, jobs, and hope, and that's what we're going to deliver for them.
Well, that sounds great. There's a lot of impediment to achieving that, and some of that you saw in the budget. And it speaks to how we grow and govern this country. So maybe we'll step next into some policy. Because after all the buildup that we heard, this Carney budget was billed as transformative, right? Once in a generation, a reset for growth, productivity, and fiscal discipline. But the reaction from business has so far been clear. The numbers don't match that narrative. Deficits are large and climbing, debt is getting worse, and the so-called investment agenda is just more rebranding of spending. So let's start there. If you were presenting your own first budget today, how would you make real fiscal discipline the watchword again, and how would you stimulate growth?
So the great Thomas Sowell said the number one rule of economics is scarcity. There's never enough to satisfy every want. And he said the number one rule of politics is to ignore the number one rule of economics. And that's what this government has done. And frankly, it's what all governments do, because they're always spending other people's money. There's an inherent discipline in a household or business budget because you're spending your own money or that volunteered to you by your investors. There is no such discipline in government. So the governments think with and. I'll have this and this and this and this and this, an all-you-can-eat buffet. I want to bring in an either-or discipline, where every time government brings in a new spending item, they have to match it with an equal savings. I call it the dollar-for-dollar law. The Americans brought this in the Clinton era, 1994. They had a balanced budget by 1998. They paid off $400 billion of debt. But as soon as that law, they called it the pay-go law, as soon as it lapsed, The American government went back in deficit, has not emerged since. So we have to reinstate scarcity within the government so that politicians have to make the same either-or trade-offs that single moms, seniors, and small businesses make every single day.
Right, it feels like there's just more and more debt right now for spending, right? They can just
That's
keep
right.
digging into debt, and what you're saying is the trade-off has to be there, which is an incentive that's not in government right now.
If there's a big hive of waste somewhere in a department, the minister today has no incentive to go and root it out. There's no political benefit to him. He's going to anger his bureaucracy, maybe some interest groups. But if you said to that same minister, you cannot bring a memorandum to cabinet seeking more spending unless you show up with an equal amount of savings, well, then he'd have to go into his department and find the waste. So let's impose the same scarcity on politicians that we impose, that is naturally imposed on every other creature in the universe.
Right, and it's the same incentives that exist in the private sector. It's just putting some incentives around constraint and scarcity. You've talked a lot about unleashing investment and productivity. The areas of this budget that have largely been sidestepped, beyond cutting spending, what's the single most powerful lever you'd pull to get people actually investing in Canada again? Is it regulation? Is it taxation? What are the big things you can move here?
Well, let's get rid of capital gains tax on any reinvestments in Canada. There's $500 billion of net investment that is left from Canada to the U.S. over the last 5 years alone. If you said to all the companies that have invested at the south of the border, bring the money home and you won't pay any tax, there'd be an enormous incentive for them to do it.
Huge. Yeah.
And then they'd have to also be able to do something with that money. So we need to go from 19-year approval times for a mine to 19 months. We need to go to rapid building permits and other regulatory approvals. This should be the fastest. Why don't we set a goal? Bring all the mayors and premiers and the prime minister in one room and say, let's set a goal. Let's have the fastest building permits anywhere in the developed world, right here in Canada. I can tell you that would bring home a ton of investment immediately.
We've heard from the Carney government promises about hitting timelines, about things like pipelines and productivity, but those promises keep slipping. What do you think they're getting wrong, and how do you think you could do it better?
It's not clear they want these things to get built. I mean, Mark Carney's now been prime minister for 7 years, and he still won't say that he favors building another, feels like 7 years. I meant to say 7 months. It's been the same policy for 10 years. But he still won't say in 7 months whether he favors building an oil pipeline. He has not said that. He said he wants to use conventional energy. Well, you know, depending on how you define it, windmills can mean affordable, can mean conventional energy. So when you have a prime minister who 7 months in, 7 months after promising to build things at unimaginable speeds, still won't say if he even supports the possibility of building an oil pipeline, it's clearly not going to get done under his watch. I would use the powers in Bill C-5 to set out a path and pre-approve a pipeline so that private sector could come with permitting certainty, knowing that they already have the approval to get it built. And let's get rid of all the anti-development laws and taxes, C-69, C-48, the industrial carbon tax, and the list goes on. Get rid of all of that so that even the projects that politicians have not identified explicitly can go together, go ahead in a free market.
So we've seen it again. We were talking about credibility in government projections earlier. We've seen it again and again in the last decade, actually, that governments, successive governments, including the one you mentioned, the budget this year being twice what it was last year and what it was projected. Spending projections are climbing higher and higher every year, and fiscal anchors seem pretty malleable, or at least they're not as anchoring as we once thought they were. And reliability because of that is slipping, and the market loses faith in the government and the government's own projections because of that. How do we bring back credibility to the government in terms of those projections so that the market and participants can better understand where this country's going?
Well, it's as simple as delivering on the promise. You know, they broke another anchor in this budget. The election promise the Liberals had was lowering the debt to GDP ratio, and yet the debt to GDP ratio will rise over the next 5 years. They originally said it would be a $10 billion deficit, nothing more, and you know, it went up to $300 billion. They said it would be a balanced budget after 3 years, and here we are 10 years later, and there's more deficit. So, you know, I'd love to give you a programmatic answer, but the answer is you just need a prime minister who will actually set a plan, stick to the plan, and then the market will see very quickly that they've got someone who's minding the store.
Moving on to housing and competitiveness, because these are national economic choke points, really. It's not just social ones anymore. If you were designing the growth agenda through the budget, and you talked a little bit about the reforms to housing and permitting, but what's the one reform that would make the biggest difference to getting things to actually work?
No tax on home building. Right there in Ontario, it's, I don't know. John Love's over there. How much is the tax on a home, John? Okay, it's a third. John Love says that it's the right answer, so I'm going to shut up now.
Well informed, yeah. Right, so you got to take the tax off the builders who are making the homes and make it easier for capital flow and capital formation. On top of that, you know, this has really caused, I said it was an economic choke point, but it's also a social choke point. There's a big frustration in the younger generation, and you see it bubbling up through different elections in the Western Hemisphere. Younger people feel frustrated. They feel locked out of capitalism. They feel the system's failing them. How do we make them active participants again in capitalism, and how do we share the, you know, we're at the economic club, share the idea that the benefits of capitalism can flow to everyone?
So I believe the fundamental problem in the Western world that's leading to the divide between rich and poor is not that there's too much free enterprise. The contrary, I believe that it's monetary expansion. Massive monetary inflation is inflating the assets of the super rich while destroying the purchasing power of the working class. I was at a very modest cafe in rural PEI, and I asked the lady, how much